Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto saves Mito Uzumaki part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Mito Uzumaki took a calming deep breath of the magnificent air around her. The fragrance of the various amounts of flowers, along with the colorful flower of lilies, the lilacs and the sweet scented lavenders filled her senses. She heard the distant waves of the sea clashing against the shores, the cheerful singing of the birds that flew from tree to tree, as well as the leaves crashing against one another from the help of the wind. She felt the grass blades that ran through her right hand, the pleasant heat of the morning bright sun that hit her skin, the smooth breeze that ran through her vibrant red hair. She usually tied it up in buns, but this was the exception. Her own hair wasn't long, it just reached her shoulders, at least compared to other Uzumakis. She usually came here to relax, her own personal meadow that only she knew about. Nearly a 2-hour walk away from Yuzushigakure, a recent village that hardly had a 4-month lifespan, but one of the very first of its kind, a ninja village. She took in another breath. She had found this meadow weeks after when construction began. While Mito was more calm and composed compared to other Uzumakis, she did enjoy satisfying her curiosity. She thought a bit of her childhood, but perhaps she was a bit too curious since she did get into trouble when she was younger. Her walks in and around the village were frequent. She found that it was more enjoyable when the elements were around. Like rain or snow that would cover the landscape, it sort of added a different aura when it wasn't. Originally, she had found her personal area when a light layer of snow coated it. When spring had came in, she was pleasantly surprised to find various species of flowers blooming. Now she frequently visited here to relieve stress and to simply relax. Being an exceptional sensory type, she would make sure that no one would follow her, going as far to suppress her own chakra. She stood up from where she sat, making sure to brush off any grass off her kimono. Her white garb was intricate, a white high-collared kimono with an obi tied around her waist. The Uzumaki caressed the back of the obi. She walked around the daisies, making sure ever so to take a moment to take in the fragrances of different plants. Her life was fairly mild now. Ever since they had ended their, she had to admit, dangerous nomadic lifestyle. It was that she much preferred to travel and to see new sights. She admitted to herself that it was the only thing she missed. That life ended when Konohagakure was formed by the Uchiha and Senju clan, and their village was formed by the recommendation of the Senju clan, whom they always had close ties with. She thought about Hashirama. She sighed. She was a bit enamored with the clan leader. Perhaps it had something to do with his personality, which carried an unpredictability she found interesting. She would have thought that the power he wielded would have given him an arrogant personality, but she had found that she was wrong. Since their villages had close ties, frequent village visits were common. The visits were composed of groups. Whenever she had the chance, she would always traverse to Konoha, usually to satisfy her curiosity of a different place, since greatly enjoyed discovering new things. Except she greatly enjoyed a place to come back to sleep, something that she enjoyed to sleep privately. Now whenever she went to the village, it was usually to see the Senju clan leader, and he had very recently taken a slight interest with her last group she ventured out with. They had a small talk that she greatly enjoyed. They were still acquaintances, and she had a growing crush on Hashirama. As she found out, Konohagakure was about a 1/3 larger than their own, with large walls and a gate that surrounded them. Their visit would last for several days, and then the trek back home would be made. At the several trips she had been on in Konoha, she had debated on staying there, but she decided not to, since she wanted to explore it first, little by little, to get the most out of the village. Some things are best to savor. After all, she was also reluctant to move out of her home. The Uzumaki clan was like a family to her. She narrowed her brow at the sudden chakra she had felt. It seemingly appeared out of nowhere. She disregarded a sunflower that she had been looking at to focus on searching where the chakra signature was. What? Her small frustration at possibly being followed turned to confusion. She turned to the south, whereas the north contained her village. It can't possibly. She looked up in the sky, a figure falling 50 meters from the ground and some distance away from the meadow. No way. The figure quickly approached the forest. She heard the distant sounds of tree branches snapping and a muted thud when the figure hit the ground. Surely whoever that must be. She sensed that his chakra signature present, but faded into a more subdued state. She stood in her meadow in slight shock at the sudden appearance of the figure. She stood there for a few more moments before her curious nature got to her. Making sure her kimono wouldn't let up, she set a brisk pace and traversed for a few minutes to where the person fell. She got cautious as she approached closer to the site, preparing to defend herself at a possible ambush. Her ninja training had told her to return and report this to the clan, but she didn't want anyone to find the meadow or this person to possibly die from the 40-minute sprint to get to the village and back. Besides, she was told that she was one of the best kunoichi that Yuza had to offer. She approached slowly and saw numerous broken branches and fallen leaves that littered the impact site. She saw a small crater embedded in the ground. At her distance, she couldn't see the person due to the depression in the ground, but they were still there. She took careful steps, making sure she would react to any sort of action. She saw a blonde young man, around her age. He had 3 whiskers on each cheek, his rough blonde hair hung over his closed eyes, which was surrounded by orange eyeshadow. His face devoid of any baby fat, leaving a firm jaw. He wore an orange and black jacket, its zipper partway down, letting the collar run free, and showed he wore a fishnet shirt. He also wore orange pants, showing her that he preferred orange-colored clothing. Handsome, he was unconscious but somehow peacefully, despite from the height he fell from. She now stood over him, knowing he was really out of it. She deduced from the size of the crater, which was several feet deep, that he had fell even further, that she saw him fall. Which confused her because he looked unharmed, other than he was unconscious. One of his hands clutched a black bag that was over his chest, no doubt to protect the contents in the bag. Dirt was strewn everywhere on him, some leaves still in wild hair. He was still alive, told by his rising chest and active chakra that still hung weakly. She looked to the sky to check of any indication of where he had fell from. I never met of anyone who could fly. She remembered hearing of a person who can, somewhere in the land of Earth. She looked back at the blonde on the ground and saw the orange marking around his eyes disappear. Is that some sort of jutsu? His chakra got noticeably weaker, but his condition showed no outward signs of change. She felt his chakra, which strongly reminded her of chakra of the Uzumaki clan possessed. She kneeled down and nudged him a few times, no response. He breathed in deeply and slow. He's definitely out of it. She had limited knowledge of anything that involved medicine. She checked him for any broken bones. After several moments, and to her shock, found nothing that he had anything broken. She was immensely curious about this person. Who is he? Where did he come from? Why does he have similar chakra to an Uzumaki? Why did he fall from the sky? Nonetheless, she couldn't just leave him here. She took the bag he clutched in his hand and set it aside. Preparing herself, she moved the obi on her waist, letting to tie to the side, and quickly tied her hair into the buns. She stood up and slung his one-strap bag in front of her, and she clumsily brought him on her back. It was clear that he was taller than she was, as his feet slightly dragged on the ground. She shifted his weight around and slouched forward so that his feet wouldn't graze the ground. She groaned that she was going to be carrying him in an uncomfortable position for a 40-minute run. He owes me cinnamon buns. Later, making sure nothing was left behind, she started in a run to bring him to Uzumaki. Mito Uzumaki stood in front of clan leader, Shin Uzumaki. He stood at 5 feet and 10 inches, 56 years old. Despite his age and because of the life force of the Uzumakis, was still considered one of the strongest in the clan. He's very knowledgeable in Fuinjutsu, one of the best. He had long white hair that reached midway of his back. He sported a thick white square goatee and mustache that slightly sagged down. He wore the usual attire for when Uzumaki went to battle. A high-collared, long-sleeved black garb with the red Uzumaki swirl on the shoulders, along with black pants, and wearing the gray armor that went down to cover the thighs, with the black sash to keep the armor in place. They were a large room decorated with various items, flowers, stands, the large Uzumaki crest that hung behind him. The building was obviously new from the recent village that was erected. Shin sat on a simple chair behind a large desk that had several papers in a pile. Mito wondered how the situation differs at Konoha, since there was several large clans. There was only one major clan, which was the Uzumaki, and several minor ninja clans that made up Uzumaki. It was clear what the leadership that was present here, so she wondered if the clan leaders in Konoha all convened to discuss matters concerning their village. Whatever it was obvious that such meetings would take time, unlike the matter that she had presented to her grandfather. Fell from the sky, you say? He spoke loudly. It was something most Uzumakis shared. She nodded at his question. I see, that is quite peculiar indeed. We'll wait on his medical report before we decide anything more on the matter. She nodded in agreement. She had brought back the spiky-haired blonde back to her village, straight to the large building which the clan leader resided. He was immediately brought to the infirmary to be checked out on his current status, and now she had just finished explaining on how she found him. For now, we'll see the contents that's within the bag. She approached the desk and gave him the small black bag that she found with the blonde, and he roughly dumped out its contents. She slightly cringed at the manner. What if there was something fragile? Shin quickly organized the items that had spilled out, which wasn't much. She quickly inspected the stuff: several scrolls, ink, a calligraphy pen, a tool pouch, a shuriken holster, some rice balls, and a red cloak that had black flames patterned at the bottom. She controlled her amusement at the last 2 things she saw: a black and white nightcap that looked like a dog, and along with a fat green frog wallet which had some Rio spilling out. That's how I'll get my cinnamon buns. Her grandfather was less subtle. A hearty chuckle escaped from him as he looked at the nightcap. She didn't think that this person was dangerous, or at the least mean any harm to her clan. It was only one person after all. So he must be a shinobi, Mito commented. Shin nodded as he emptied the tool pouch, which contained some wire and some peculiar-looking kunai. She watched at how her grandfather picked up the kunai. It was triple-bladed with a faint yellow handle. She saw a strange formula written on the grip. "What is it?" she asked. It took several long moments of him inspecting the kunai before the older man answered. "It seems like a formula similar to summoning, so a space-time formula." "Really? So he's a Fuinjutsu user then?" The writing supplies had hinted that, but it didn't really confirm it. He nodded at her questioning. She was glad that she found out something about the mysterious blonde. "Yes, this formula is no simple task. No doubt it needs a trigger to activate, most likely from our guest whoever he is quite adept in Fuinjutsu," he praised him. Which had surprised Mito, since he hardly ever praises anyone. He proceeded to check through the remaining items. Some of the scrolls were blank except for one. It seems that this one holds many of the same item. He inspected the scroll and channeled some chakra. The same tri-pronged kunai earlier before popped out of the scroll. "How many of them?" "Around 300. "Wow, that's quite the number," Mito commented. One of the medical ninja entered by this time. He was plain looking and forgettable. He was dressed in a doctor's uniform composed of white and smelled of antiseptic. He came to step beside her, no doubt to report on the mystery guy. Shinhei bowed in a formal manner. "I came to report on our guest," the clan leader mentioned for him to continue on with his report. "Anyways, he's completely fine, no injuries whatsoever, other than the case of major chakra exhaustion. But nothing can be told of his mental status as of currently." Shin nodded in understanding, knowing that they hadn't received any of the machinery to check for any brain damage yet. "Nothing was found on him?" Shin asked, prompting a shake of the medical nin's head. "You can go." The doctor turned on his heel and walked out, the door shutting close. Mito looked back to her grandfather, who sported a contemplative look. She opened her mouth to speak, only to be interrupted by him. "You said his chakra is reminiscent of Uzumaki, correct?" "It is." "Well, I don't think that he had any plot against us. Other than the kunai he possessed, he had nothing that would pose a danger to us," he replied. He closed his eyes in a contemplative state. "I know how you are, Mito. You're curious about him." She didn't respond for a moment. "So, my granddaughter, I want you to watch over our guest until he awakes." "Is that a mission?" she asked. "Yes, but since he's not a POW, think of it as community service," he replied. Uzumakis were usually optimistic, and a rowdy bunch. They were quite unusual compared to other larger clans, like the Senju, Uchiha, or Hyuga. Although Shin did worry a little, if he turned out to be hostile, he was confident that Mito would be able to put him down. Which he believed that it wouldn't come to pass. "We'll want him to be relaxed as possible when he awakes, so I think your apartment should be okay. We don't want him to feel intimidated or escape should he stay in a hospital or a prison." Shin watched her nod a little too fast for her usual behavior. He slightly chuckled as she closed the door. Mito looked at the blonde guy curiously. He was like a puzzle she was eager to solve. Her life was filled no expectation, while she had a calm demeanor compared to other Uzumaki. Her curiosity had taken over. She liked unpredictability, something sudden and extravagant. Her clan was predictable in her sense. Despite being uncommon, her clan was usually optimistic about everything, but also careful. There was something lacking, she couldn't pinpoint what though, and it made her somewhat uneasy. Perhaps she needed a change in her life, something to excite it. Something foreign for her to solve, that would ease her curiosity. This wild blonde-haired teen was able to satisfy it, somewhat. He was a complicated puzzle in her mind, an anomaly. She wondered if he continued to be so, or if the puzzle would solve for her when he awoke. His sudden appearance over the sky was something of interest, so did the formula on his kunai. She couldn't lie that she was immensely curious about things she didn't understand, and she usually tried to figure out the basics to it, and once she figured it out, it would bore her a little. Over the course of the yesterday and today, she would occasionally watch this handsome blonde sleep in the guest room in her home. IVs and such medical equipment was present in the room, to monitor his well-being. She knew her skills as a kunoichi was being used here. Her exceptional fuinjutsu would hopefully be enough to restrain him, should he be less than friendly. She lived in a 2-bedroom apartment that only she alone lived in. He slept in a mostly unused bedroom, decorated by neutral objects, such as an Uzumaki flag, several drawers for storage, and flowers picked from her personal meadow. He slept on a plain beige bed and matching pillows and blankets. His gear that he had brought with him was laid out on a desk on the left side of the bed, his jacket under it, the side which she sat on. The door was open behind her. After the first day, she thought that he would have awakened, but he didn't. Her fascination of this odd character continued to grow. Simply because of his chakra continued to grow stronger, and continuously did so over the next day. It was not all. His chakra seemed to rival the relaxed state of Hashirama Senju, already known as one of the most powerful shinobi to ever live. Even if she had never spoken with the unnamed blonde, her fascination continued to grow. Once again she wondered if the mystery would be solved right when he awoke. If it did, she would be immensely disappointed. Still, she had taken her clan's optimistic nature, that he wouldn't be like a disappointed ending to a clever puzzle. Perhaps he was something she had needed. She liked puzzles that could be solved. Mysteries that kept her on her toes, something interesting. One thing was his chakra. It feels amazing, so warm and welcoming. She had never sensed a chakra so happy, so full of life and vibrant. She felt an uncharacteristic faint wave of heat appear on her cheeks. The closest that she could compare was Hashirama, while it carried a pleasant feeling. His was a torch in the darkness, but the blonde was a bonfire that radiated warmth. Like his chakra carried a purity to it, untainted by negative emotions and hate. She wondered how such a thing was possible. Now it was the second day, and she partially controlled her excitement. She began to get impatient for him to awake. She wanted to get started on her puzzle. To her surprise and excitement, his chakra and its warmth continued to grow. Mito felt the fabric of the blanket on her hands. Her head rested against the softness of a bed. Her back and neck ached in protest at the awkward position she slept in. It took her a while to determine where she had slept in her drowsy state. She groaned as she rose after leaning on the bed, and she figured out that she had slept in the guest room. She heard some of the children laughing and running outside her apartment. The sun shone through the blinds of the room. She heard the constant ticking from the clock that hung to the right. She looked to see that only an hour had passed since she was in this room. I actually slept in here. She looked back to the bed to see the ruffled blonde asleep peacefully. It was late in the day as the sun would begin to set in an hour or so. She stood from the chair and walked out of the room. Her apartment wasn't exactly large, but fairly sizable since she lived alone. She walked out into the hall, her room directly across from the guest room. Her apartment had 2 small bedrooms, one for herself and a possible guest. She walked down a small hall to enter the bathroom on the right to freshen herself before continuing on with her day. She stood in front of the mirror to gauge herself. Her hair had some loose strands that had escaped from her buns, and that her white kimono had misplaced itself. She quickly freed her hair from her tie and gathered the loose strands of her red hair to retie it. Satisfied, she quickly straightened her kimono into a more suitable position and exited the bathroom. She felt a little embarrassment from her reactions towards the blonde. She was worried of his well-being for sure, but to sleep at his bedside like a concerned lover? She shook her head at that and continued down the short hall. Immediately at the end of the hall was the exit to out of the house. To her left was the living room and to her right the kitchen. It was her home, but she didn't really consider it to be one. Her apartment was decorated with various items, but it didn't feel homey to her. Just a place where she slept and ate food in private. Although it did feel more like a home whenever her sister was here. She traversed into her kitchen and grabbed a cup in one of the 3 cupboards. She felt a little childish that she was excited for him to awake. She filled her cup with water and felt the pleasant sensation of the cool liquid going down her throat. She sighed as she put the glass down in the sink. She reminisced about her mother as she walked down to her room. Her words resounded in her mind as she recalled a moment from her childhood. "My dear daughter," a mother bent down while little Mito ran after her and slammed into her, encasing her mother in a desperate hug. She felt her mother's arms slid around in a near similar embrace. "Mommy," she clutched her tightly, some tears escaping from her. "I don't want you to go," she pleaded. She was dressed in her battle attire, preparing to be sent off on a mission. Mito had heard that the skirmishes between clans had begun to get rougher, and that more fatalities were occurring. 7-year-old Mito was worried that she might never see her mother again. She felt her mother's hand run through her hair in a calming manner. "It's okay, dear," Mito continued to cry as her mother started to hum for her. Slowly, she felt her tears lessen, but the sadness was still present. She looked up in the warm eyes of her red-haired mother. "Listen, I want to tell you something," she said softly. Mito nodded in understanding and listened intently at her next words. "Love is powerful. It will always beat negative emotions. It can save you from the dark." She smiled lovingly at her. "That's why I'll always be with you, because you're a part of it. Did you know?" Mito smiled shyly at her and nodded enthusiastically. She felt the hold her mother had on her disappear. She rose a little and planted a kiss on forehead. "Please take care of your little sister for me, okay? Until I get back?" She smiled at her. Mito walked slowly down the hall, taking each step carefully as she hummed a tune that her mother would do whenever she was put to bed. She recalled what her mother had said before she left. Love will always beat hate and save you from darkness." It was one of the last words that her mother had passed down to her. At that time she was reassured that her mother would return, only to be devastated at the news that she had fallen. Nonetheless, she carried on with her mother's wishes. She cared very much of her sister, and it took a long while before she realized what kind of love her mother had meant. The love of a family, not just from her sister. Her mother took strength of her own family, of her 2 daughters. She couldn't remember her father, as he had died when she was young, but her mother had reassured her that he was a great man. She vaguely remembered the love she had in her voice and the sadness that was it as she talked about him. Mito wondered when she would have children of her own as she opened the door to her room. She felt a slight change of the warm chakra radiating from behind her. Not one to leave her curiosity be disappointed, she closed the door to room and went directly to the guest room. Although his chakra had fluctuated several times before, she thought that there would be no change this time, since the one earlier today was more pronounced than this one. She opened the door and suddenly found herself looking at impossibly blue eyes. His eyes widened in fear? Or "You're really beautiful, you know," he blurted out hoarsely. She looked at him for a moment, so bold, she thought to herself. He started to cough roughly and he clutched at his throat, and Mito realized he would need something to drink. "I'll return soon," as she quickly exited the room. She felt her excitement as some of her questions would be answered. She quickly grabbed another glass from the cupboard and filled with it water. She felt an unfamiliar sensation on her cheeks. Am I blushing again? She realized that she was subtly bouncing as she finished filling the cup. This time she slowed down on her pace to return to the room where the mysterious blonde sat in. It wasn't that she wasn't called beautiful by other men, in fact there were many who had called her that, but never did she ever respond to it or react that way. Perhaps it was how he had said it, it wasn't a simple courtesy or him trying to flirt. He had said it with conviction, his voice and eyes told no lies or carried an emotion that made her uncomfortable. It was innocent, and he truly believed in his words. She made her way into the room. She saw him looking down and breathing shallowly on the bed. He looked up and their eyes met for a moment before he caught the cup of water in her hand. "Here," she said to him as she closed the distance, and handed him the glass. He eagerly took and nodded in appreciation. He disregarded his manners as he completely poured the water straight down his mouth. Loud gulping and trails of water running down his chin and neck from his inability to drink the water quickly. She watched him curiously as he quickly finished the rest of the water. What, as he wiped away the moisture on his chin. "God, that was amazing," he sputtered. Mito was a bit amused at his actions, a slight smile on her face. He looked at her, and she saw mass confusion in his cerulean. "So where the hell am I?" as he scratched his neck. "In Uzumaki," the red-haired said calmly to him. It didn't seem to lessen in curiosity, and only increased his confusion. "Yeah, that didn't help at all, no idea where that is in fact," he replied. Mito heard no form of worry in his voice, showing her that he was either unconcerned or hid it well. She did the confusion grow within his eyes. She thought she might start out simple. "What's your name?" she asked softly, trying to sound as comforting as possible. He looked at her for a long moment. It seemed his ocean blue eyes sort of had a piercing element, as she attempted not to break his gaze. "Damn, I don't even know that either," he replied, sounding defeated. His eyebrows furrowed, as in pain. Mito felt the need to help him, to comfort him from his confusion. She could tell that he sounded genuinely believed in his words. "Do you not remember anything at all?" she asked. Now she was definitely curious about the strange, and she had to admit, handsome character. "Well, the last thing is falling from the sky," he chuckled. "Although how I got there, I got no clue." Mito was amazed at how relaxed he was, like it didn't bother him at all. "That's okay," she replied happily, something unusual as she would mostly reply in a more calm demeanor. Her curiosity had gotten the better of her. She was glad that the mystery would keep going. That the puzzle had actually grown in size, rather than solved. "I'm Mito Uzumaki," she smiled at him. Which he had responded with one of his own, which made her heart stutter for a moment, not that she noticed. "Hi," he replied happily. She heard the loud grumbling of his stomach. He scratched his neck in an embarrassed manner. I don't suppose that you have anything to eat?" he asked. Mito thought about the options. "I suppose I can cook something up," and tried to get something out of him. She didn't really know if it would work. Or we could go to a restaurant if he could recognize anyone or anything. Certainly he had never been around here. She had never felt such a unique chakra before. She could never forget something like that. "We can go eat somewhere of your choosing," she suggested. "Man, I'm starving," as he pushed the blankets off him. He immediately tried to stand, only to fall straight to floor. "Are you all right?" as he attempted to stand. She was at a loss on whether to help him or not. If he would be grateful for such a thing, or if he would feel like it was an insult to his pride. Yet, as he shakily stood up on his feet. He stood at least 2 inches taller than her, whereas she stood at 5.7. Mito remembered that he had a jacket. His snug fishnet shirt was slightly distracting to say the least. She walked over to the desk beside the bed as grabbed the jacket under the bag. "These were found on you," she mentioned to the items, and she gave him the orange and black jacket. She hadn't touched it at all since he was placed here by some doctors and shinobi. Thanks," as he put on the jacket. "Should I take the bag?" he asked, pointing towards the said item. She thought about it for a moment. What would the situation be now that he was awake? "I think you can leave it for now," she replied. They would need to visit her grandfather later on, they would figure out the situation by then. He nodded quickly as zipped up the jacket partway, and he checked to see if it really fit. She looked at him in shock, as he turned slightly to look at his back. That's the Uzumaki crest. Could he be a Senju? Or from Konoha? While the Senju wore the crest in their friendship, there was talks that they were going to add it to Jounin uniforms in Konoha. It was odd, it looked like an ordinary jacket, and she hadn't heard of the crest being used as fashion. While the Uzumaki was known for their fuinjutsu, they weren't that famous as to be used a part of everyday clothing, other than the fact that the crest might hold something of value to him. Could he be an Uzumaki? There was many questions that she wanted to ask him. She restrained herself before she fired them off and possibly scare him away. I think I am ready now. Mito caught the slight stammer, but ignored it for his sake. She nodded and pointed at the sandals under the table. He understood as he went to put it on. Now I think you're ready, as she walked out of the room with him trailing behind. Do I really like orange this much? He commented sourly. She peeked behind her to see him looking at his clothing of choice. I don't think he seemed to be knocked out of his thought process for a moment. No, wait, I think orange is an awesome color. She was amused at his sudden direction in opinion. She could easily tell that he was about to insult his taste in color. Although it did slightly interest her at one other thing being confirmed: he liked the color orange. Insignificant really, but it was a small piece that would make him up. Is there reason why? She asked. They had reached exit from out of the apartment, and she reached down to the mat to grab her own sandals and went to put them. I wish I knew, but I like the way it looks on me, he replied. Mito looked up at him for a moment. He was peering at various decorations strewn in her apartment. For a flicker of a moment, she saw some fear in his eyes before it dissipated, and he turned to look at her as she finished putting on her sandals. You have really pretty hair, you know, he complimented. Staring straight into her eyes, he had said it so nonchalantly, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. She was entirely unprepared for such a sudden and unusual compliment, as she felt another blush flash on her face. No one really compliments on my hair, she stated, trying to get rid of the blush. He simply shrugged his shoulders in response. Well, I don't see why. He merely waved away her comment. It's only the truth. She could almost feel the sincerity in his words. No matter, casually he said it. I see. She turned away from him to open the door and hide herself from him. Thank you, I suppose. She opened it for him while he went on ahead. She locked the door and joined him outside. By then she had gotten control of her blush. She silently berated herself at being so flustered at such a comment. The sun was about to set, and the sky was beginning to darken. Purple clashed across the sky. She took in a breath of cool air, and she led the way down a hall, the right side filled with doors that entered other apartment, while the left had a rail and showed other villagers on the streets below. The blonde followed silently behind as she walked down some stairs. They reached the open street when Mito saw a couple or two going for a night out. The blonde ended up standing beside her, and at her realization it very much looked like they were going on a date. I don't even know his name, nor does he. She couldn't just back out now, she proceeded on her with the blue-eyed man following beside her. She noticed that he looked a bit anxious as his posture was slightly rigid than before while she was in her apartment. She recalled earlier before being distracted by his compliment. I guess he does feel a little scared. She guessed that he had hidden those emotions by distracting himself. With her as a victim, somehow she didn't feel the slightest bit insulted. He was in an unfamiliar setting, and he didn't even know himself. She felt a little sorry for him, and she made the attempt to converse with him. So she said, trying to catch his attention, and which he immediately looked at her. She could see a little relief in his eyes, like he had begun to be overwhelmed. Since we don't exactly know where you had come from, how about you get to know me? She suggested. Where was she supposed to start with him? Ask him the same questions and hope there's something that comes out of it? She thought that she might as well make him more comfortable around her, and help him distract himself. Okay, he nodded in agreement. So how did you find me? He questioned. I remember seeing nothing like a village around before I hit the ground, at least I think I do. I was at a personal spot when I sensed you in the sky. Really? What's the spot? She took a careful moment before she decided to answer him. It's a beautiful meadow, with all various species of flowers, she replied. You can hear the waves crashing against the shore as you look at all the color in the field. She got a hold of herself before she blabbered on. Wow, he replied. Wait, you said sensed. How did you do that? He asked curiously. Mito made a right turn on the street. They were getting closer to the restaurant area. I'm a sensory type shinobi, it's what I can do, she replied. Cool, am I a ninja too? He asked, avoiding a small child that ran in front of him. I think so, she replied back to him, remembering seeing the gear he had in his bag. She heard a whispered awesome from him. Mito saw several more couples in the crowd, all heading towards where no doubt she was heading. I can only hope that no one recognizes me. She never had a boyfriend before. Caring for her sister had been a top priority before, and so was being a shinobi of her clan. Except now her sister was old enough to live on her own and all the fighting had begun to die down drastically since the forming of ninja villages. If she was recognized by one of her friends with a handsome young man, it would spread like a wildfire since she was known as being sort of a prude. Even her own little sister had begun to comment on that, saying how she needed to find a man. Mito shook her head at that. There was already some talks that she had begun to flirt with the esteemed Senju clan leader. Much to the delight of her sister. Can I ask you something? She nodded. Why are you helping me? He asked. She looked at him as they made a left turn on a street. You looked like you needed help, she replied. He didn't look convinced. Nah, I don't think that's it, he waved her off. I thought that you might have gotten hurt, so I brought you here, he didn't reply straight away, making her relieved at the stop in his questioning. I don't think that's all of it, she nearly wanted to sigh in exasperation, before she reined it down. I mean, you could have just dropped me off at the hospital, right? She had nothing to say, she could only nod at being caught. I was ordered to, she didn't like that answer at all. Although she did try to sound as convincing as possible. She hoped it was the last one in his questioning, she regretted trying to make him more comfortable by getting him to know her. He also had this cute smug smile on his face. Nah, that's not it either, he replied, a grin on his face. What? She replied rather loudly for someone like her. He was starting to infuriate her. Why doesn't he take the hint? She definitely did want to talk about why. She got in control of herself before she yelled like that. She quickly looked around to see nobody had noticed the calm Mito slightly yell out in anger. Why do you keep pestering about it? She replied sourly. I don't know really, I guess that's the way I am, he replied, no change of his personality that she basically just yelled at him. He still had this wide smile on his face. I mean, you were so friendly when you didn't have to be, he added. She sighed as they continued to walk, returning to her normal self. How would you know something like that? What if I was feigning? She asked curiously. He scratched his chin as he contemplated. I guess I just sorta know, he simply responded. It's all in your eyes, she was a bit stunned by his answer. She didn't think that he could simply tell just by looking into someone's eyes. She had wanted to know him, this mysterious person she just began to talk to barely an hour ago. She wanted to know about him, but she didn't want to let him know too much about herself. She never really opened up to anyone else but her sister. She couldn't just lie to this person, since he somehow could tell them apart just by looking into her eyes. She definitely couldn't handle not looking into someone's eyes while they conversed, it just wasn't proper. I was curious about you, she admitted. She felt a little embarrassed at that, she could almost imagine him laughing at him at such a lame reason and for him to call her out on another lie. Yeah. I guess it's not every day that you see someone randomly fall out of the sky, huh? He chuckled. As they continued walking on. She looked him wondrously. You really are odd. They turned around another corner. Hey, are we close? Starving here. As he patted his stomach. One more turn, she replied. Wait. She felt a hand on her shoulder, and she resisted glaring at him as she turned to look at him. It seemed he was oblivious to social etiquette or didn't care about it. She ignored it since he was suffering from amnesia. Luckily, the hand came off as he pointed towards a direction behind her. Yes? There's a ramen stand. What about ramen? As she turned to look at the direction he pointed at. No, he pointed towards a particular ramen stand titled Whirling Ramen. It's just that I think that ramen would be amazing right now. She turned to look at him, and saw some slight drool at the edge of his mouth. He quickly got in control of himself, and turned to look at her. Can we? He asked. Does ramen sound better than fresh red bean soup, sizzling grilled chicken, seasoned fried rice and grilled salmon with miso paste and a whisked egg? She frantically tried to formulate appetizing dishes, so that they wouldn't go there. He stared into space, as she finished. She thought that had accomplished it. Nope, ramen does sound better, he stated. Come on, let's eat, as he crossed the street to go ahead without. It definitely seemed that he was ignorant of social etiquette. He's really stubborn, she sighed as she made her way to Whirling Ramen. He had already made his way inside the stand. It was small, it had flaps that separated the outside and a few chairs that the unnamed blonde sat on. She didn't hate ramen, it was a bit too low class compared to what she regularly ate. It wasn't that she hated the place, in fact, there was someone that she visited all the time in there. She didn't want to be seen with him, to be mistaken that she had a boyfriend. She ventured inside and sat herself beside the orange-clad man. Mito, a thin middle-aged man by the name of Kenji, appeared from the back. He wore a white apron and had short brown hair, and had a small scar running down his left cheek. He looked more welcoming rather than intimidating despite this. He was the owner of the small ramen stand. "Good evening, Kenji," she replied out of courtesy. She saw him look back and forth between the blonde at her several times. He luckily made no attempt at commenting on this and continued on with business. "What can I get you too?" he asked. She breathed out a quiet sigh of relief. She was thankful to him. She was already going to get enough torture from the next person that would inevitably show up. "Miso pork ramen," the blonde replied after looking at the menu in the back for several long moments. "Same here please," Mito added. It seemed Kenji couldn't help but make a little jab. "One bowl or separate?" She looked at him for a moment, willing down a blush. "Separate, I'm guessing," as he went to the back. After a minute or so she waited impatiently for the next person to arrive. The cerulean eyed her curiously, but she ignored him. She wanted to know more about him, and she hated/loved that he had amnesia. She wanted to know what kind of skills he had in Fuinjutsu, since it was enough to impress her grandfather. She wanted to know his name, and how he came out of the sky. Soon a red-haired teen popped out of the back. Her long red hair was tied into a bun to keep it out of the soup. She wore a white apron with a green short-sleeved shirt. She was fair-skinned like her, and also shared the same eyes, black and pupilless. She was slender and was several inches shorter than her, and had a more rounded face. The teenager's face instantly brightened as she saw her. "Mito!" as he rushed to put down the soup. As soon as she did, she leaned from across the counter to try and plant a hug, which she had to complete. "Hello, Emmy." "So where were you?" she asked. As she stepped back from the hug, she looked at the blonde beside her, still waiting for his ramen that hadn't been set down in front of him. "Dates, right?" seeing the blonde beside her. "He's an acquaintance," Mito replied to her. He paid no attention as he looked hungrily at the ramen that was out of reach. "It starts off that way, next thing you know you're married," she made her way to the blonde, who had only noticed as she walked in front of him. "I'm Emmy, Mito's sister." She let out a hand, which he completed the handshake. "What's up? I don't know my name though." Weird, she shot at a glance at Mito, which Mito mentioned to the ramen. "I guess I'll talk to you later." She handed down the ramen, and left to the back. "Yeah," the spiky blonde said as he snapped his chopsticks. Finally, surprisingly, he waited for her to grab hers. It seems he's not entirely oblivious to it after all. As she prepared herself. "Itadakimasu," he yelled out. She silently watched as he dove into his ramen, her being impressed forgotten as he ate his food like a starved dog. She reasoned to herself that he hadn't really ate anything filling lately. She ignored him, returned to ramen, and ate hers quietly. She thought about his energy and attitude, which was filled with positivity, like his warm chakra was of any indication. She felt the need to be beside him, to feel his chakra. She was immensely curious about him, the way she had complimented her red hair, which actually made her feel pretty, despite all of the constant compliments other men made towards her. It felt like she could actually believe in him. He had energy, but it actually made her feel like her outlook had brightened. He actually made her blush several times today. She turned to look at him. She could lightly compare his personality to Hashirama right now. He was positive, but he had several outlooks that she didn't know if Naruto would share. She wanted to know more about him. "Is something the matter?" she asked, seeing him slow down on his eating. He looked down at his soup for another moment. He turned to look at her. "My name is Naruto," he replied. "A ramen condiment?" She remembered that she actually came out to see if he could remember anything. She was far too concerned with it looking like a date. "Hello, Naruto," she smiled, which he easily beat with one of his flashy grins. She noticed that it made her heart flutter pleasantly. She realized she actually wouldn't have minded if it looked like a date. "How could you have eaten so much?" Mito asked as she handed an unpleasant amount of Ryo over to Kenji. He smiled widely and deposited the Ryo into the register. Naruto looked at a stack of bowls. The top slightly teetered, threatening to fall over. He rubbed in his belly in satisfaction over the amount of ramen he ate. He looked over the red-haired woman, her look in mild disbelief at the bowls. He could imagine the succulent taste of the dish, the texture of the noodle on his tongue, along with each and every distinct flavor that the miso pork ramen provided to his taste buds. The broth was near perfection to his opinion, and he would simply drink it after finishing the noodles and other ingredients. One thing was for certain: it was amazing. He nodded to himself in agreement. Except there was something missing, something he couldn't point his finger on. "Sorry, I guess I forgot my money if I have any," he replied embarrassingly. He could go for more, but he didn't want to keep Mito any longer that he had to. She had finished her bowl of ramen long before, and had looked in shock at how fast he had eaten his share, and amongst others. He had gotten so distracted that he had completely forgotten he didn't have any method of payment for the noodles. Luckily for him, Mito had agreed to pay for his meal. He felt a little disappointment that he had forgotten about it, He reasoned that he would make it up for her one way or another. "It's all right," he heard her say. She stood from her seat and straightened her white kimono. He stood up himself and followed her out the flaps of the small ramen shop. "Come again," he heard Kenji yell out from within the restaurant. He had a hopeful tone of voice, satisfied from the amount of ramen he had eaten. He once again thought about what was missing. Something that could have been added to make it to perfection. "Mito. I'll see you after," he heard her sister call out soon after. Emmy was it? Recalling her name. The duo walked together, and she replied with her own goodbyes. He followed Mito and he quickly figured out that they were going a different direction. He looked at the sky. It seemed the night had fallen instead of the dying rays of sunlight. Some street lights had turned on to keep the darkness away. The streets were mostly bare, but occasionally a couple or so would come out from another street, enjoying their private walk. He looked back up to see the beautiful amount of stars in the sky, shining brightly as well as the crescent moon. A smooth, pleasant breeze came by and he felt it flick his hair calmingly. Naruto suddenly felt at peace, like tomorrow wouldn't matter and that he was relaxing somewhere and feeling the burning sun on his skin. He reveled in the feeling, and disregarded on why he was feeling such tenderness. "Hey," he randomly called out. It felt natural to him as he turned to face the woman beside him. He flinched a little as he saw who was beside him. She turned her head towards him to look into his eyes. He saw the unmistakable aura she held in her eyes. Yes? Oddly, he was expecting someone else. There was only the red-haired woman beside him. Luckily she didn't notice the flinch he gave off, but the feeling he felt earlier wisped away. He hid his disappointment, but confusion washed over him. "Where are we going?" he asked. A question he had wanted to ask just disappeared and he had no hints as to what it was. He decided to ask an earlier concern, since they obviously weren't going back to her place. He was completely lost and had no idea what event might unfold before him. Night had taken over and he had no place to stay. "We're going to see my grandfather." "Oh, for what?" "Find a place for you to sleep in," she replied. Oh cool, he certainly felt like an oddity here. He had woken barely more than an hour ago, and in some beautiful stranger's home no less. He peeked at woman beside him, who carried herself proudly. She had beautiful smooth red hair tied in buns, but some swept aside that hugged her cheeks and jawline. Her lips were pursed, but he could tell they were quite supple and pink. Her skin was quite porcelain in comparison to his, and she had a purplish diamond mark on her forehead. She wore some sort of small golden crown between her tied-up buns. Under her white kimono she wore some sort red dress underneath, and flowed gently above the ground. He wondered if he had ever met someone who dressed as elegant as she did. Despite her regal appearance she had this childlike curiosity in her eyes. He also just felt the warmth and tenderness within them. "Don't worry, I'll visit you," she said reassuringly. "Thanks, so how long was I out?" he asked. 2 days, she replied. He could tell she was eager to ask some questions, but was holding back. It was obvious as to why. "I don't even know myself, what's my last name?" He tapped his chin thoughtfully. Only one surname kept appearing in his head. "So how does a Naruto Uzumaki sound?" As he continued tapping his chin. Although the only connection was only the surname he'd heard. He looked curiously at the red head. It did have a nice ring to it. He thought he saw a faint blush appear for a split second before it disappeared. It sounds perfect actually," although he did catch the small stammer. "I really like your hair, it's like gold," she added almost nervously. He noticed that were plenty of red-haired people around here. Occasionally he found the brown-haired or raven-haired individual when they walking to find something to eat. Thanks," he replied with a smile. He swept a hand over his unruly hair. He realized that he hadn't exactly looked over himself in a mirror as of yet. "It might be a possibility," she added, "that you actually could be an Uzumaki." "Really? How's that?" "Your chakra, it's similar to ours," she explained. "No means of really confirming that you are, though." Well, we'll figure it out eventually, he replied. A calm silence swept over them. Mito added a nod and he decided to take another peek at her. He saw a different expression on her face. Her eyes were focused and her lips were slightly unnatural compared to before. With nothing to focus on, and with the lack of talk with their companionable silence, he attempted to recreate her expression. After a moment or so, he found that she was biting the inside of her right cheek, and which made her lips slightly misplaced. Getting the little mystery over and done with, his thoughts pranced about nothing in particular. This amnesia thing is boring, he tried to contemplate, but it lacked cohesive direction. There wasn't much to think about when he couldn't recall anything. All it did was create more questions that couldn't be answered. He might as well share it with Mito later on. Bringing his mind together, He focused about the dinner they shared together, and felt himself slightly drooling at the thought of the dish. "Oh yeah, thanks for paying for the ramen," wiping the hint of drool starting to form at the corner of his mouth. "It's of no concern, I was the one who had forgotten you had money." "So I do have some money, huh? I promise I'll pay you back." He figured that it was in the bag that he had left behind at her apartment. "You don't need to," she replied, which surprised him a little. "Really? But I want to." He was met with silence, looked over to her to see a contemplative look. A anticipating smile revealed itself after a moment. "Well, if you insist." "I do." "Then I suppose I can come up with something," she replied. He saw expression that showed him that she was anticipating for when he did. He speculated on what it might be about. "Looking forward to it," he answered honestly. He wanted to be around her, since she was so intent on helping him with his memories. The red-haired woman did carry a welcoming presence. He noticed her slow down on her pace and looked to her to see what it was. "Here we are," she added, looking in up front. He followed her gaze to see a large building on an incline, and stairs led the way to the top. It wasn't exactly grand, but it did look impressive compared to the other buildings surrounding it. "This is weird." He was lost at what he was comparing the building to. The thought escaped from him before he could catch it. "This is the Uzumaki mansion. This is where the clan leader resides in, and the village's leader." "So are there two people?" he asked, only for the redhead to shake her head. "They are the one and the same." She took the lead once more, and Naruto followed. Oh, he inspected the building more closely as they walked up the stairs. The building was 3 stories in height, although the 3rd floor seemed to be smaller in width. He speculated that the clan leader resided on that floor. 4 large decorated wooden pillars were supporting an open roof before the doors that led inside. Right above the doors were a large crest of a red swirl. Beside the stairs were grass and several flowers popping from out of the ground. Naruto was brought out of his detailing when he noticed the woman was walking slightly in front of him. He would be blind if he didn't notice her swaying hips. The obi tied around her waist only accentuated her bottom. He cleared his throat and furthered his pace to match hers. He quickly willed down the heat on his cheeks. "So your grandfather is here, right?" "Yes, he's the clan leader." He reached the door first and opened it for her. "Thank you." He nodded and followed her inside. Damn it, when he noticed she was in front, one's eyes trailed over before he quickly looked straight ahead. On no perv, he felt a little awkward speeding up to walk beside her once more. He focused on surroundings of the building to distract himself. After a short walk through a small hallway, they entered a large room. There was a pair of stairs that they took that led to the 3rd floor in the middle of the room, while there were surrounding hallways that led to different rooms on each floor. The room itself was painted beige that was added with some brownish colors. He heard several people talking nearby, muffled by their distance and barriers. He briefly thought of the purpose of the building before reasoning that their intent was on caring for the village. "So how long has the village been here?" he asked, noticing the relatively new furniture and lack of worn items. They reached the top on the 3rd floor. It was relatively smaller than the other floors as there was no hallways. There was only one open door, which was on the opposite side of the room. "It's only been a few months since it's been formed, otherwise one of the first of the hidden ninja villages," he nodded. Hidden villages, it felt familiar to him. He felt a little frustrated that he couldn't recall it. Quickly closing the distance, they entered the open doorway that had a receptionist just beside another closed door. Mito walked up to a middle-aged woman, dressed in formal attire. The blonde stood some distance behind and decided to inspect the room but was listening on their conversation. "Excuse me, is my grandfather here?" The woman took a brief peek at both the guests before shaking her head. "I'm sorry, he left on an important meeting that the clans of Konohagakure wanted to discuss with him," she replied. Konohagakure, he heard some talking between both Mito and the secretary. "So it's another ninja village, huh? That's pretty cool. I wonder how many other villages there are?" He mused a little about this, before he noticed that Mito had turned to him out of the corner of his eye. "What's up?" turning his attention to the red-haired woman. She held a slight look of disbelief. "It seemed my grandfather will not be here for another few days." It took a moment for him to click on his predicament. "Oh," he chuckled nervously. "So I guess that I just sleep on the streets then," he joked. She scoffed and shook her head at his distasteful joke. "Nonsense. Okay, then what now?" Mito walked alongside the blonde, well with her slightly in the lead. She didn't exactly think she would have suggested that he stay over at her apartment. He was someone that needed help, and she couldn't turn him away. He didn't deserve to spend a night on the streets, or spend most of his money staying at a hotel. What kind of first impression would that send him? She wasn't given a definite estimate on her grandfather returning to the village. She wondered how important their meeting was, since Shin seemed to have forgotten about their mysterious guest. She looked over to the mysterious blonde. He was far too interesting for her own good. So how do you feel so far? The blue-eyed man looked her in the eye. Well, he wore a slight confused expression, along with a contemplative look. I feel really weird, like I don't belong here, he replied. That's putting it a bit mildly, but he hasn't been here long either. Perhaps that you can get accustomed to this place, Mito suggested. They were halfway towards her apartment. Several kids ran through an alleyway, playing hide and seek or tag. That was one thing that was missing from before. A feeling of safeness that their previous lifestyle that couldn't be accomplished before. I hope so, but I feel. She turned to look at her companion. I feel like something's missing other than my memories. Mito was a little bewildered by his comment, but mostly fascinated. What could it be? Was it something that was a part of him? A companion? Or a personal item? For a moment she thought amusingly that it might have been the nightcap he had in his pack. We might find something in your pack that I found alongside you. Maybe. I think it's something big, though. He seemed to have forgotten about his little dilemma and simply relaxed. He put his hands over the back of his neck as they walked ever closer to her place. Interesting how nonchalant and unworried he is, she thought to herself. There was a chance that he might never recall the rest of his memories at all. Yet, even with the casual comment, she felt certain that he thought he would regain his past. They walked the rest of the way to her apartment in a companionable silence. She was followed up the stairs and to her door. Unlocking the door with her key, she opened the door to invite him inside. Thanks again. I really like that. You're a nice person, he said rather loudly. It's what anyone would have done, she replied. He merely waved her off while he took off his sandals. Maybe, but that still doesn't take away that you're a good person, he retorted. I just see the kindness in you, I guess, he added. Even if you are a private person. That again? She thought. He certainly was on the mark that she didn't exactly share details of her life to others. Mito wondered on what made her share things of herself, but she reasoned that it was to make him comfortable and to help him. He walked off to the hallway without her leading the way. She was a little agitated that he went off, and not be like a normal guest and wait for her to show him around. He rounded off the hallway and into the guest room while she took off her sandals. Perhaps that's why she was a little drawn to him. Normal was a little stale. Naruto was nearly on the opposite spectrum on that scale, well as far she knew. Mito walked through the hallway. The door was wide open to his impromptu room. He was in the middle of fumbling with his bag on the desk. He looked up and smiled after a quick second. You want to see if I can remember anything, right? Let's check it out, he mentioned for her to come in. Am I that predicable? She did say that she curious in him. She felt regret that she had actually told him that. Her curiosity easily won over her frustration and entered into the room. She sat herself down on the side of the bed. Naruto came over and recklessly spilled the contents on the mattress. It's like he doesn't care at all. She was still somewhat amused at this, more especially at next comment. Whoa, do I actually wear this? Picking up the toothy nightcap. I'd like to think so, she snickered. He gave a heartwarming smile before returning to the items. The next thing he picked up was the red-black flamed cloak, which he quickly wore. It's pretty cool, he said to himself, turning in place as he inspected on how the garb fit him. She noted some kanji on the back. Mount Mayaboku? She said aloud. He looked quizzically at her. Where's that? I don't have a clue. She was delighted to have found another clue to him. Perhaps a little interesting was such a shortcoming term to describe him. Figuring that pondering about it wouldn't bring out any results, he continued on. He froze after a moment. Did you remember something? She said excitedly. Her thoughts raced towards what he might have recalled. Wait, I know this. She looked towards the items to figure out if any of the items were responsible. Her best guess was the tri-pronged kunai amongst the ordinary items. He seemed to reach for it, only to pass right by it and over to his stuffed frog wallet. I call this Gamachan. He bounced the wallet on his hand, a proud and nostalgic smile on his face. Mito wasn't expecting this, completely blindsided that he had recalled something insignificant that didn't reveal much other than he was a little childish in nature. She giggled, which had quickly grown to full-blown laughter. He had an amused grin, eyes full of appreciation. He chuckled alongside her, as she quickly restrained herself. You have a beautiful laugh, he added. She gathered herself before she replied to him. Thank you. She wasn't entirely sure how to respond to him. How was she supposed to reply? Would a compliment suffice? She wasn't well versed in that regard. Kunoichi were people and ninja like everyone else. Seduction was entirely optional. She obviously chose not to specify in that manner. He seemed to have moved on before she could reply. He unrolled the sealing scroll, which she remembered as the scroll that was kept full of the special kunai. Okay, what's going here? I feel like I should do something as he inspected the sealing formula. Here, let me show you. She was given the scroll and he looked curiously at her. You channel chakra on the formula. Depending on the amount of chakra and bursts, she demonstrated it, and 2 kunai flew wildly a foot in the air. She was about to grab them before she was beaten to it. He easily caught them by their handles. He twirled the one in his right hand as he inspected. How cool, he said. It wasn't impressive by shinobi standards, but a mere civilian would have struggled. So I guess he really is a ninja. She guessed that he had only done it on instinct. So what are these markings? He asked. She had some time to inspect the formula itself. She came to the same conclusion as her grandfather. I believe it's a space-time sealing formula, so I suppose it's used for teleportation, she answered him. He hummed while continued to inspect it. She noted how good the cloak fit on him, like it was especially made for him. There wasn't much that was answered today, and only more mysteries appeared. He didn't seem to have recalled anything that related to his past, other than his wallet. So what is it that's missing in him? A constantly growing puzzle, along pieces that were blurred and only revealed itself after some time. It excited her. You didn't recall anything else? She asked curiously. Nah, he replied. He set aside the kunai while he prodded the other items, which were insignificant and didn't reveal anything else. She yawned tiredly and stood up from the bed. I think I shall go to bed now. He looked up at her. All right, good night, as she turned towards the door. Good night. Mito lay in her bed. Her hair was freed from her buns and she was dressed in a conservative nightgown. She thought about today's events. It was a bit odd now. Sure, the blonde was sleeping here once again, but he wasn't unconscious this time. She also invited to stay over. While she was satisfied with it looking like a date, undoubtedly she wasn't okay if someone she practically met today was seen entering her home and looking like she felt her face flare up at the thought. She certainly felt desires to be intimate with the opposite sex, but only with a man she loved. It was only very recently, the forming of the village, that she even begun to search for someone of potential. It was a peaceful time and there was no threat of war on the horizon, since every new village was focusing on recruiting clans and constructing. It was clear to her, really. He was right, it wasn't every day that she met someone who fell out of the sky and someone who was suffering from amnesia. She thought about his strong jawline and adorable whiskers, oceanic blue eyes that spoke of immeasurable depth, his enticing lips and firm voice. He was very peculiar, and she wanted to find out more and help him along the way. It certainly was a bonus that she found him attractive. She recalled her thoughts on when he said their clan name, Naruto Uzumaki, when he had said it, for some odd reason. She thought of how he might obtain that name, marriage. It was only for a split second, but it had made her flustered. So she just spluttered whatever that came out to distract herself, and only for her to comment on his wild blonde hair. He certainly looked exotic in this place. There wasn't really people with golden hair in Yuzu. She wondered what he was doing, since he had just woken up not long ago. She wasn't as tired as she initially thought. Perhaps she would need to be a good host and figure out something he could do to entertain himself. She sat up from her bed and turned on the lamp and thought about what he could do. She had several books that he could read. She wasn't sure if he would like any of them. Most were fiction, and delved into aspects of life and morality. She didn't think he would like a little romance she had. Mito thought that perhaps he would enjoy a few games of shugi or go with her. She didn't particularly have many opponents to test her skill. Deciding that she would ask him herself, she walked to her door and absent-mindedly straightened her hair. The door opened silently. She wondered if she would live here long enough for it to creak. She walked across to the door opposite and knocked quietly. There was no answer, and she knocked once again. Still no answer. She thought briefly that he might have gone for a walk. She turned the knob and peeked through the door to confirm her theory. Mito nearly faltered when she saw him lightly snoring, dead asleep on the bed. How is that possible? She thought as some drool escaped from the corner of his mouth. She nearly let out a snicker when she heard a ramen escape from him. I suppose he really enjoys the dish. She realized what she doing when he tossed and turned over the blanket, revealing that he wore orange boxers. Her face turned red and she quickly closed the door to the guest room and walked back to her own room. He's unpredictable, as she slid under her blanket and turned off her lamp. Mito thought once more about her new guest while she waited for sleep to take her. She didn't remember the last time she had laughed like that, carefree almost. Mount Myaboku, it sounded a little familiar. It was something distant she couldn't pinpoint. It flitted around in her head and waited for a specific object or word to help jumpstart her memory. She disregarded it and decided to wait for it to come around. She was also interested about the seal on his kunai, curious to see how it functioned in action, wondering if it was anything similar to the Shunshin Jutsu, which was accelerated movement. Although it differed as the seal allowed transportation perhaps of the person with the technique? It was clear that he had shinobi training. Perhaps some training and chakra exercises would help stimulate his abilities. Her thoughts roamed about the blonde through the night, until sleep overruled her. She heard some loud, irritating knocking. Repetitive and in a specific manner, it felt like her sister had arrived at her house. She opened her eyes to find that her room had brightened from the morning sun. Mito felt like the sun had risen too early. A brief look at her clock revealed she had woken up an hour later than she usually woke up. Odd, at 8 in the morning she regularly felt rested. Another hour for sleep felt like bliss to her at the moment. "Come on, Mito!" She heard the low muffled yells from her little sister, accompanying it the loud knocks. She felt a little sloppy as she rose from her comforting bed and quickly searched for her robe, since she still wore her nightgown. She did her best to wipe the sleep from her eyes, and she picked up her brush and hairpins and walked out her door. She walked down the hallways and heard the fiddling of a door handle behind. Bathroom, hearing a low mumble from Naruto. Reaching the door, she quickly unlocked it and opened it to find her sister Emi. She was free from her work attire and was dressed in casual attire. A red sweater with black pants. "Finally, I did say I was coming over." Her eyes widened in surprise. She followed her gaze to see the blonde in his boxers and t-shirt stumbling into the bathroom. "Did you know?" Emi trailed her words as she let herself into her apartment. Mito looked back at her sister in confusion. "What are you talking about?" she asked, still trying to recover from her sleepiness. "Well, one thing, it looks like you slept with him," Emi said bluntly. What? "Come on, he's half naked and inside your place. You still look tired, and I thought you were usually dressed by now," Emi continued as she entered her kitchen. "It's a bit logical from my point of view." Mito went pale. "It's..." "Don't worry, Mito. I know you're not like that," she cut in as she inspected the bottom cupboards. "It is pretty suspicious though," she added. Mito had already figured that out for herself. "So tell me about this guy. He popped out of nowhere and you were with him." Mito quickly gathered herself. She still felt a little flustered. She knew that it would go like this. She decided to focus on brushing her hair to tie into her buns. "That's quite accurate, actually." "What do you mean?" She heard the flushing of the toilet and the subsequent sink. "Exact." "Damn, that was awesome," she heard the blonde say loudly. He seemed to have proceeded into the guest room. Emi looked wordlessly at her, Mito giving a sheepish look. They heard a closing of a door, and she began talking once again. "Not really a person like yourself, is he?" as she returned to prodding the cupboards. "No," Mito admitted. He was far from being eloquent. He didn't really respond to social cues most of the time. His table manners when he began to eat were atrocious. "You don't have any flour," as she ceased her searching. She stood up and walked over to the fridge and inspected briefly. "Or any blueberries?" "I forgot," Mito replied. She recalled that she was supposed to go get some more yesterday. Emi had a knowing look, no doubt to talk about the blonde. "So what was that about him not knowing his own name?" she asked. "He has amnesia, and about before he really did appear out of nowhere," Mito replied. Now that she thought about it, did the kunai had any sort of correlation with it? "You're doing it again," interrupting her thought process. "Doing what?" "That face you always do when you're interested in something." She had an odd smile on her, along with mischievous sparkle in her eyes. "So someone has caught your attention, huh? Now that's fascinating." And? Mito felt a little defiant, but she certainly wouldn't let her little sister see the heat that was starting to form around her cheeks. "And you're not feeling bad? I thought you were interested in Hashirama. He's a clan leader and a powerful shinobi," she prodded. Mito sighed. She always began to get like this whenever romance was involved. She always insisted on finding someone, saying that she deserved to have happiness. Mito was perfectly content on taking her time. Rushing through things wasn't exactly her way of doing things. She tried to formulate a reasonable response to answer her sister. "It's because he has amnesia, huh?" Well, she didn't quite know how to respond to that. "Admit it, you think he's far more interesting than the god of shinobi, right?" Mito heard the door swing open. "Emi, he's still inside," she whispered to her. Still, she found herself agreeing with her sister. It was quite petty, but the way she met Naruto far exceeded the way her and Hashirama met. Fine. The blonde quickly made his way to where they were. "Yo! Morning, Mito, and Emi, right?" She gave her greetings and her sister carefully eyed him. "Morning to you too," her little sister replied. "Right. I remember my name now, it's Naruto," he replied. Mito could almost feel the energy that poured off him, from every word he said. Energetic and almost carelessly. "Oh really? It's nice to meet you, a fitting name considering the amount of ramen you ate yesterday." "Oh yeah, That was some amazing ramen yesterday. Not really as good as Ichiraka's though. Mito quickly turned her entire attention towards the blonde at the new information. Ichiraku? The young blue-eyed man turned to her. He scratched his head thoughtfully. No idea where that came from. Guess it's another ramen stand or something, Emmy suggested. Also don't let Kenji know you said that, she added. Oh man, if that Ichiraku's is better then I want some of that ramen, he replied. He can get really serious about his noodles, Emmy whispered. Mito ignored this and prioritized to see if he recalled his memories. Anything else, Naruto? Voicing her thoughts. He looked at the ceiling as he contemplated. Nah, nothing, he finished. Out of the corner of her eye, she saw Emmy raise her brow. Hey Naruto, Emmy questioned, capturing both the individual's attention. You're a guest, so can you do us a favor? Yes, sure, what is it? He replied without hesitation. Emmy dug into her wallet and pulled out some ryo. Can you go get some flour and blueberries for us? Emmy quickly explained where the nearest grocery store was located. Mito knew what she wanted to do. Emmy wanted to have some girl time and talk about the blonde that slept over. No problem. Giving a salute, he quickly put on his sandals. Naruto, you really don't have to do this, Mito voiced. It's alright, this is easy stuff, he waved and proceeded outside without any further arguments from her. The door slammed shut, effectively leaving her alone with her sister. She didn't like the boy talk. Well, I have to say, Emmy started to speak. He just went out there without even asking why. Mito did have to agree. It revealed something about his character. Although the specifics weren't clear, was a no-questions type of guy. Which was something typical of a shinobi. Or did he simply do this because he wanted to help? Regardless of the importance. Well, there's that look again, effectively bring her out of her contemplation. What look? Mito asked. She thought about how her expression changed. Was it noticeable? Or subtle? You really do want to know everything about him, don't you? Her sister questioned, effectively starting her what Mito felt like it was interrogation. What are you talking about? Face it, you lit up like a child seeing sweets when he said Ichiraku. Once again she was at a loss of what to say. He has amnesia, I want to help him. Sure, but mostly for your own self-interest. It reminded Mito of what Naruto had said yesterday, and how he easily saw through her facade. It made sense for her sister, since they known each other for their entire lives. Except he was able to do that hardly an hour after they officially met. So how did your date end yesterday? It wasn't a date. I don't see anything romantic between bowls of ramen and sitting side by side, Mito retorted. Yeah, it's mostly done when you're comfortable with one another or between friends. Mito reflected on this. With his warm chakra, she did feel incredibly calm and comfortable around him. It was a little odd. But you're not friends, and that totally was a date, Mito sighed. Why do you insist? She asked. She already knew of the answer. Emmy wanted her big sister to be happy. Emmy ignored this and continued. Well, did you flirt with him? And him with you? She asked. No, she said unconvincingly. She reflected on yesterday, the comments they had made to each other. She definitely wasn't one for dating. He did say I have beautiful laugh and that I was a nice person among other things. There you go. That was flirting? Mito asked. Yeah, obviously, Emmy replied. Mito looked at her sister. This realization hit Mito like a ton of bricks. How could she have been so oblivious to it? There were sure told signs that he was. Even she had returned the mutual courtesy. But to her, it didn't really feel like he was just flirting. It sounded more like he was just stating the obvious. Just absolute genuine comments, at least she felt that way about it. He didn't seem to be the deceiving type. Despite being a shinobi, you were flirting with him too, weren't you? Yes, she said quietly. He wondered if he knew about it. Did he know that he was flirting? He couldn't as oblivious to it. Worst of all, they were supposed to go on another date today. The thing was, she was greatly looking forward to it. Naruto sat on the chair of the bakery shop. He couldn't put his finger on it, but something felt familiar about this place. He'd never been here before, obviously. Perhaps it was the bakery shop? Or the smell of the place? He decided to wave it away and focus on the beautiful red-haired woman that sat across from him. When he had came back from helping them with their shopping, Emmy had said goodbye and proceeded on her way. He thought that at least they had something to do that involved eating what he had bought. Instead, Emmy had simply said that it was later, and she had forgotten something. Mito had looked nervous at that time for some odd reason as well. She seemed to have gathered herself since they had arrived. So, why we're here again? He asked her. She had this curiosity that was almost impossible to be rid of in her eyes. She always looked at him like that, He wondered if it was simply because he was suffering from amnesia like he was a game, but there was also genuine worry with it. This time she had a playful and a bit childish look in her pupilless black eyes. Because you owe me cinnamon buns, he raised his brows. What? They have a delectable taste. Right, I still owe you for buying me ramen, he smiled in amusement. He felt a little nudge in the back of his head. Like he should be remembering this for some reason. Even though it was impossible since he never met the woman before yesterday. By this time the waiter came by and quickly came and dropped off the cinnamon buns. Prior to this, she had already paid for it with his money. The shop itself was very homey. It seemed to be built for comfort as they sat on large comfortable seats, and there was tall dividers that separated each table for privacy. He watched as the woman known as Mito picked off a bun and took a careful bite off the treats. She closed her eyes and slightly moaned in pleasure, as she did. He chuckled and she seemed to remember that she wasn't alone. A cute light blush flashed across her cheeks and she wiped her face with a napkin. I got carried away, she replied embarrassingly. Her blush quickly disappearing. Hey, it's alright, it's cute you know, he said. This time a darker blush appeared on her face. Naruto found himself looking at a different colored eyes. There was no sound, and his surroundings seemed to be hazy and unfocused. This girl in front of him wasn't Mito. She had long midnight hair and pale pupilless lavender-tinted eyes. To Naruto, she was as breathtaking as the red-haired woman. She had a slight happy smile on her face, and when they locked eyes for a moment, he found warmth and love and happiness. She looked shyly away and a rose-colored tint appeared on her cheeks. The smile widened slightly. Who is she? Naruto thought to himself. Her pink, inviting and luscious lips moved but no sound came out. She brought a cinnamon to her mouth and took a small bite. Is this what felt familiar? Naruto? Mito said questionably. He found himself looking in black pupilless eyes. A different color and different emotions replaced the lavender eyes. Curiosity etched in her eyes, but concern was more prevalent. I just remembered something, that's all, composing himself as he replied. Can I ask what? Yeah, there was someone who seemed to have liked cinnamon buns just as much as you did, he smiled at her. It felt right to say, he had said only on a whim, but it felt like the truth. I don't remember her name, though. He watched her slightly deflate at the new information. Her eyes flashed with some disappointment, but she still carried a small smile. Her? She asked. What did you remember exactly? He thought about the midnight-haired at what they were doing. Doing what we're doing now. What do you mean? He didn't understand what she meant by that. Sitting here and eating, I guess, he replied. I just saw what she looks like a bit. I see, Mito added. Weird, he thought. He grabbed a bun for himself as he looked out the window of the shop. The bakery was located just outside a small park. People enjoying themselves as they walked through along with their families. He thought about the girl in his memory. Those white eyes of hers, he felt like it was a little special than others. Man, all this is so confusing. Where was this person? Did he know other people? Would they freak out when they saw him? So many things. Even if you haven't really promised, thanks for helping try to get my memories back, he said the woman. At least he had some help, a person who wanted to. It meant a lot to him. Like I said, it's interesting, she answered, taking another bite of her snack. So what do you enjoy doing? He asked, recalling what she had said last night, about getting to know her a little more. She thought about her answer for a few moments. I enjoy studying and learning Fuinjutsu, she mentioned to the pale purple diamond-shaped mark on her forehead. This is actually a sealing jutsu. What does it do? He asked. She seemed to get into a trance, showing him that she was a little passionate about it. It's called Strength of 100 Seal whenever I use a jutsu, which require chakra. I don't have to utilize any of my own. Wow, that's pretty cool. Thinking about jutsu made him get hyped up. Could you show me any of your jutsu? It's what I thought of earlier. Perhaps you can remember something if we train together. What kind of training? He asked. I can show you examples of my own ninjutsu, and along with chakra exercises. She seemed to be anticipating as much as he was. Could he remember anything? What excited him most was that he could recall any sort of cool jutsu. I hope it's going to be awesome. I can't wait for it. He wanted to get started right now. Screw the cinnamon buns. But I thought perhaps that you would want to visit where you had fallen first, Mito suggested. Alright, he relented. Although training sounded more exciting, he did want to see if anything could come out of it. Why do I get this feeling that I don't belong? While this was far, the blonde commented. Really long too. It's a walk that I enjoy, she proceeded through the meadow. It was relatively quiet. The chirping of bird and the distant waves crashing against the shore was all there was. She took a deep breath of the pleasing aroma while Naruto followed her. Leg. He burped loudly. Good thing we ate more before we came. He didn't bother apologizing for such rude behavior. She sighed and continued towards the site where he had fallen. You're undefined, Mito commented. Meh, he shrugged her off. She controlled her nerves as they exited the meadow and into another part of the forest. That was a beautiful place, though. Indeed, she replied. Naruto was the first person that she had shown the field to. While it didn't hold much significance, it was a pleasant area that helped calm her. Just a place that she could relax in. They hadn't talked much on their near 2-hour journey here, several comments here and there. Although the cerulean-eyed blonde was a little restless, and constantly complained about the time or distance to get here. Is that it? As he paced past her, walking towards the indentation in the ground. The area was in the same state that he had seen him in, leaves and dirt strewn about. He stood directly over the crater while she joined him. Yes, Mito replied. He nodded, and simply glanced around the area before resting his gaze upon the depression. When I found you here, you had these orange markings on the corner of your eyes, she added, hoping to help jumpstart his memory. He inserted his hands into his jacket, and wore a concentrated look on his face. After a minute of silence, he looked up directly into the sky. Nothing's coming for me, he took in a deep breath. I'll be honest, Mito noticed the change in his demeanor. What if I don't remember who I really am? What do you mean? What if I can't remember anything else, and it will never come back, the wild-haired talked. I'm not worried about that though, I just can't stop thinking. He crossed his arms as he continued to stare into the sky. He seemed to try and gather his words. Even if I never recover my memories, could I just, start over? I suppose, but what about your family, or friends? She wasn't entirely sure if she added a significant other. I'm sure you'll recover them. I guess he didn't sound entirely convinced. It was little odd, before he sounded so sure about himself. Where was this doubt coming from? He exhaled loudly and swung his arms. Maybe if I could remember something, if I fell from the sky again, he chuckled, doing a turnaround on his personality. He turned around and started the trek back to the meadow. Let's go check out that place again. Okay, and joined him by his side. In their lull of conversation, she was reminded of earlier at bakery. Who was that girl with him? He didn't seem to realize, or ignored, or didn't care that they were sort of on a date. He seemed to have been doing the same with that girl. She didn't bother trying to speculate their relationship. Mito was a little curious as to what she looked like and that perhaps it might lead to a clue, if he recalled anything distinct. She resolved to ask him at a more appropriate time. Making their way to the flower-filled field, he led the way near the central part of the field. He suddenly plopped down on the ground, the grass and any unfortunate flowers bruising away from the weight. Mito looked curiously at the fellow, who was nestled on the ground. Come join me, he said to her, eyes shut closed. I'd much rather not, she replied. She was a little concerned of dirt potentially getting into her hair. She might be a kunoichi, but she didn't want to get unnecessarily dirty. The most that she would do was to sit down. She sat down a comfortable distance away from him, his outstretched left arm within reach. He peeked with a sideways glance and raised his brow. That's boring, he replied with an annoyed tone of voice. Come on, just lay down and feel amazing. I don't see how that would make me feel spectacular, she retorted. Well, all you see are the clouds rolling by in the sky, the heat on the sun on your skin, he sighed contentedly for a moment. I just feel one with nature, and nothing really matters other than right now, he said softly. She was a bit bewildered from his sudden change in the dynamic of his character. She smiled wistfully. If you say so, she relented to him. She quickly disposed her buns in her hair, and the small crown nestled between them. Her hair fell down to her shoulders and placed the items to the side. Is something the matter? Seeing him with an odd look on his face. You really look good like that, she realized that she had been seen without her usual buns. He had completely taken down her guard without her realizing. When did she get so comfortable with him? Thank you, she was able to control the heat. She was still unused to the sincerity in his words. She quickly reasoned that putting her hair but into place would be a little unbecoming. She leaned back and placed her head on the grass. She looked up into the cerulean sky. Some white fluffy clouds hovered over the land. She felt the comfortable heat on her skin and face. She did feel a little calmer, actually. She didn't necessarily feel one with nature, though. I sort of see what you mean, she said to him. Of course I'm right, he replied confidently. She looked at the blue sky. She was slightly reminded of the blonde's eyes. She turned to him, and she saw a content and nostalgic smile on his face. She wondered if he remembered anything at all during his time here. Mito couldn't deny that she was physically attracted to him. He turned to look at her, with his cerulean eyes. Despite his amnesia, it was obvious that he was an honest, virtuous person but also an odd character. She turned to look back up at the sky, and that perhaps, in future she may fall for him. Mito, Uzumaki, Naruto looked towards the intrusion in their walk. Two people appeared behind them. One was a long-haired blonde man wearing a metal forehead protector with a leaf symbol. The other man wore the gray Uzumaki clan armor, along with similar band. The only exception was it carried a swirl. Both seemed tired with their rugged appearance, some sweat beading down their faces. "We have urgent news," the Uzumaki shinobi explained. "Yes, what is it?" Mito shot a particular look at Naruto, which he easily understood. He relaxed, not paying attention to conversation. It had nothing to do with him anyway, a fact that Mito obviously recognized. He also wasn't looking forward to what might happen if he listened in. So he walked a short distance away and examined his surroundings of the village around him. Some children ran across a street, going into a nearby candy store. The sun was hanging low in the sky, a fact that surprised him. Time seemed to have passed quickly today. It had been a week since he had been here. Well, conscious at least. He had gotten to know Mito and Emi a little more, since he was staying at her place. Nearly every part of the day was spent with Mito. He had merely been shown around the village, escorted by her and Emi at times. The time they awakened was far too early in his opinion. Apparently, sleeping past 10 in the morning was too tardy. Still, he enjoyed the sights around Uzumaki. He had met some of Mito's friends, shinobi and civilians alike. He tried to remember their names, as they were plentiful. They liked to comment on his exotic appearance quite a bit. Some curious glances were always sent his way, as he was a stranger. Other than the Uzumaki clan members, others sent him wary and calculating stares. He also found out that he was actually being kept around Mito because of her skills as a shinobi. Reminded of that fact, they were supposed to find out if he was able to retain any of his skills as a ninja. A coming plan that he was excited for. Mito kept conversing with the duo. He thought briefly on what it was about, but he kept his distance as they spoke in hushed tones. Several times before, he had listened in on Mito's other conversations with her friends. Before, he was berated that it was incredibly rude to do so, especially when it was private. He didn't want to get another earful of that again. He sighed as he watched the people move about their business. The fresh look of the buildings around him. It was a little odd, like it's something he wanted to see for a while. He had told Mito of it. Once again she said that it might involve his possible Uzumaki heritage. It seemed to fit enough. He had enjoyed the time he spent with Emi and Mito. He trusted them. Friends. He felt a large weight fall off his shoulders. He wasn't even aware of it until he had acknowledged that. He was glad for that, no matter how odd it was. They were friends. It made him smile. Naruto, the voice of Mito, brought him out of his reverie. Still facing away, He watched a child run across the street to join his red-headed mother. "I deeply apologize," her voice sounded with what sounded like regret. "What for?" As he turned around to see what she was talking about. Her palm was just inches away from his forehead. He couldn't comprehend what just happened, but when he was tapped by her, he was met with blackness. What felt like a moment later, he felt himself stir. His head certainly felt odd, nearly bordering on an headache but not quite. Like he had slept for an abysmal amount, but still felt groggy after waking. Or something. He opened his eyes to see familiar patterns on the ceiling. He blinked once more to try and figure out what had occurred. What the hell just happened? As he sat up. By then he noticed a figure sitting on the other couch beside him. He quickly figured out that he was on the couch in the living room of Mito's apartment, and she was the person on the love seat. She took no time in explaining what had happened to him. Sort of. That man was a Yamanka, so he checked your memories and to see if it was possible to recover them. Not that. What did you do to me? He accused. Naruto couldn't help but feel betrayed, just when he thought she was friend. Still, at least he wasn't bounded or in prison. That was a good sign at the least. I apologize once more, her voice proper and genuine. At least he hoped so, because that would really suck. It was necessary, Mito voiced. He met her gaze, staring into her eyes for a moment. He sighed exasperatedly. So what happened to me? Like I said before, that blonde man was from Konoha, and was asked to sort through your memories by my grandfather. You could have just asked and I would have let them, so that didn't have to happen to me, he grumbled. I know, she clarified. Except the Uzumaki shinobi didn't want to take chances, so I performed a jutsu on you as a compromise. He gave a nod in understanding. I guess I can forgive you. Her eyes softened a little. My grandfather was concerned about possible spies, mainly from a few rumors he had heard, she explained. I was certain you were not a spy, and I obtained a completely solid confirmation of that. Well, I guess that's okay, understanding the reasoning to protect the village. That would be shitty if I turned to be a spy, he stretched. Seeing her frown from his language. Where are those guys now? Off to rest. Alright, since that guy can see memories or whatever, did you find anything about me? Naruto voiced curiously. Interestingly enough, there was no mental blockages to your mind, safeguards, or anything indicating that you should collect information or sabotage our village. Nodding at her response. The only thing he wanted to do was to eat ramen and hang with Emi and Mito, along with exploring Yuzushiogakure. Those official buildings bored him a little, but it was nice to see, and from Mito's expression, she knew that as well. Also, apparently it was just mostly devoid of memories, she trailed off. Her voice sounded almost disappointed, but there was also some curiosity as well. He gave her a blank look. So? He needed an explanation. He knew next to nothing about the subject. You hardly have any memories at all, other than the things you know now. You shouldn't be recalling anything else from the memories present, if the Yamanka was correct. Well, I guess, Naruto replied. He hadn't remembered anything else for quite a bit. I still have these pulls though, like it's on the tip of my tongue, but it won't come, he explained. The man was only concerned on fulfilling his orders, to locate any indications that you were an infiltrator. Which he hadn't, although he did say it was unusually devoid, she explained. He felt himself frown. Well, that's really vague, Naruto complained. So I might never know who I truly am, huh? For some reason, he was a little glad he'd put that thought away for now. This is stupidly confusing. There's no need to jump to conclusions. He was able to find something peculiar. He furrowed his brow in some annoyance, waiting for her to continue. He was able to see a certain individual. That woman you saw earlier is a Hyuga. Of course, he had no idea what that meant. The word Hyuga left him completely blank. What's that? He dumbly replied. Those eyes you saw were the Byakugan, a Kekkei Genkai that belonged to a clan, one of the first to join the Konohagakure, hence, the Hyuga. So that girl, he trailed off. So does that mean I actually might be from Konoha? Yes, it's a strong possibility, Mito answered. There's supposed to be another trip made to Konoha soon. A trip, huh? Naruto asked. Mito nodded. I traveled there twice before with my sister, since we have close ties with them. I will be joining the next assigned journey there. The Hyuga live there. Will you be accompanying as well? Yeah, of course. I want to know who I am, he reasoned. I see. The next travel should be in another month or so, but before that, it also seems that I have something of importance to complete. He raised his brow for her to continue. A classified mission in Konoha. Her tone indicated that it was private. He looked at her for a moment before he was able to answer. I guess that means I won't be able to come then? Indeed, I am supposed to watch over you, and from the letter from my grandfather had written to me, this mission supersedes that, she explained. Right, you're supposed to do that, Naruto asked, referring to himself. She nodded in approval. To ensure that you're not any threat to Yuzushiogakure, among other details. Well, I don't even know who I am. I would be pretty disappointed in myself. I did want to cause harm to your home, he sighed. Mito could only smile. So what's going to happen to me? Since you're going to wherever? Either put under house arrest, or get thrown in prison. What the hell? You would think that I would be more free after you said I was not a spy, Naruto complained. She quickly explained that was her grandfather's orders and only after meeting him would he be allowed freedom. It didn't really help calm him, but he had no choice. Well, if I had to choose, that first one sounds good, he grumbled. Except you don't own a home. Fuck. Can you please stop with the profanities? Mito voiced. Yeah? I won't have you thrown in prison. That would harm your image a little. He felt himself perk up at her next words. I volunteered my apartment for that. Far more subtle and less. Really? That's awesome. Cutting her off. He saw her annoyance at being interrupted. I'm certain that house arrest isn't a cause for celebration. Heh, I guess you're right, rubbing the nape of his neck in embarrassment. Much better than prison, though. True, a short silence overcame them. So how long will you be gone? He asked curiously. It's important, but I should be back in a week or two, depending on what needs to be done, Mito explained to him. My time away shouldn't be too extensive. I think your definition of long is different than mine, he frowned. Being cooped up in a small apartment was going to be taxing. It's going to be so boring. Your apartment doesn't have anything fun. Her brow furrowed in irritation. Are you implying? He felt a bead of sweat roll down his face, feeling the scrutinizing gaze of the woman in front of him. Once again, He could tell that he wasn't exactly winning points with her. It had been like that for the past few days as well. Being too hasty in talking, not thinking about the ramifications. He couldn't help it. Her being extremely proper and little uptight about those kinds of things that he didn't care or give a second thought of. Like his eating habits and tendency to disrupt her from his excitability. She shook her head, a little exasperated. He decided to explain himself. Well, no, I meant that what am I supposed to do for so long? Mito didn't seem convinced of his excuse. I mean, I would like to check out the village a little more. I'm afraid that's an impossibility, he groaned loudly. The ninja assigned are to make sure you never leave the apartment. Well, that sucks, he slumped forward once more. I'm sure you'll find something to do, albeit I can't say I pity you for that earlier insult. He feigned a smile. Why, yeah? Let me just explain what will be occurring now, as she rubbed her temples. Her next words were filled with a serious tone. You will stay in my apartment under the watch of several shinobi. You cannot leave under any circumstances, understood? He nodded tersely, and she continued. You won't be able to sneak out through the windows. There's a seal that will alert it as soon as you take a step outside. He resisted frowning or give any sort of indication that would show his immense disappointment away. He nodded anyway. Good, since you're complaining about boredom, I'll have Emmy come over occasionally to drop off groceries and possibly keep you company, if she so desires. But isn't that a little weird? I suppose so, seeing as you're under house arrest, but I've already dealt with it. Under the reasoning that you wouldn't harm someone under the scrutiny of a squad of shinobi, it would be suicide. At any case, the shinobi are just there to make sure you don't wander about or leave the village, she explained. Well, Emmy trusts you, as do I, so please don't do anything that would betray my hospitality, such as attempting to escape. It will only make the clan leader less trusting of you, Mito finished. Naruto wasn't entirely sure why he arguing about this. He wouldn't quite as bored if her sister was around. Thanks. I won't let you down. That seemed to be the end of that discussion. A thought entered him soon after, so he voiced his curiosity. So are you really a great shinobi? That's what they tell me. I was entrusted to watch over you, she explained. I'm capable. If you as much as entered my room without permission, I would have been able to disable you within the second, she replied casually. Oh, he could only say. I made some safety measures if you ever fought back. I attached a seal to disable you, she replied honestly. He looked down at his hands. As far as he was concerned, he never saw anything on him. But I did genuinely believe that you were a good person. He was flattered by the comment. Really? What's the seal do? He asked curiously. It paralyzes you, and would render you absolutely harmless and susceptible to attacks, she explained. It's located on the back of your neck. Cool, Naruto could only reply as he felt for some sign where she said it was. All he felt was smooth skin. Can we try it? Adding excitedly. You want to try it? Mito's expression was of mild disbelief. I'm fairly positive that it is not pleasant to experience. I'm sure it will be fine, go ahead and do it. He waited for her to complete it, but she was hesitating. Come on, trying to reassure her. You're curious about this, aren't you? He nodded. If you're so determined, he bobbed his head once more, which made her sigh. I know you won't enjoy this. If you do, I'm afraid you're a masochist. She raised her hand, forming some seal. Do it, he blinked a few times. She seemed to be hesitating. Come on, Mito frowned. Almost instantly, he felt his panic right away. He muscles locked, unable to move. Falling to his side, thankfully landing on the couch. It was too foreign, terrifying, knowing nothing responded to your demands. It was torture. He never wanted to experience such a thing again. He was able to move a movement later. He sat up, moving his limbs, just to be sure they reacted. Naruto cleared his throat, trying to shake the earlier feeling. He shuddered. I'm not sure I'm entirely comfortable knowing you have that much power over me. He tried to be joking, but his current tone of worry betrayed that. She laughed. I warned you, but it's fairly late now, and I have a mission to tend to early in the morning. He squirmed when she stood up without mentioning to take off the seal. He was able to calm himself though, since he had nothing to worry about. He would never give her a reason to activate it again. At least that's what he told himself. Then again, she was helping him with his problem. He was thankful for that. It's nice having a good friend helping me, he said out loud. He saw her retreating form freeze, before turning around and giving a warm smile. He felt funny. I suppose it's quite easy being friends with you, even Emmy thinks so. What makes you trust me so easily? He asked. Mito turned to face him. The same could be said of, you also wear your emotions on your sleeve, and I also don't see how it's possible for someone with an aura like yours to be immoral. She walked away, but not before adding something. I also deactivated the seal permanently as she left to her room. He felt the skin on his neck once more before giving a sigh. He took in her words, trying to dissect them. Emotions on my sleeve? My aura? He remembered something she had said about that. Standing up, he went down the hall and into his room. He had to admit, he was really glad that the seal was off. Although when she left in the morning, it would be signaling incredibly boring weeks, at least potentially. He was going to be alone in the apartment for a while. He wasn't excited about that at all. Not to mention under house arrest, it would be torture. Although Emmy would be visiting hopefully. Naruto's eyes lazily fluttered open before closing once more. The incessant knocking sounded at the door once more, like it had every other day of the week. Piling a pillow over his head, he attempted to drown out the noise. It only met with failure when the knocking intensified. The knocking seemed to go in a specific pattern, one that he came to recognize. He continued to lie there, letting Mito answer the door. Before he recalled that he was actually alone inside the apartment. Naruto! A voice called out, muffled from the distance and objects. He remembered now. It's been a few days since Mito had left him alone to be under house arrest. It was everything he had feared. He desired sleep, but being awakened by stubborn early risers ruined that. Groaning, he grumpily stood up from the bed, and shuffled himself through the hallway and to the entrance. Annoying yawning from the interruption to his sleep. Opening the door. What is it? He was puzzled. The thought fled away before it could solidify. A red-haired woman stood in front of him holding onto a bag. Right, Emmy shaking his head to wipe the sleep away. Said person tore her eyes away, a scowl and some redness adorning her cheeks that rivaled her hair. What the hell, put on some clothes? She cursed. He looked down below, to see that he was only dressed in some orange boxers. Oh right, well you're the one who woke me up so early, he tiredly retorted. It's almost noon, she continued to look to the side. He turned around, heading back into the hall. Still way too early for me, rubbing out the sleep from his eyes as he entered his impromptu room. He quickly found his clothing and dressed himself. Why do you knock when you have keys? He yelled at her. Emmy seemed to ignore his question. Why the hell are you acting like this your place? It's not like you've been living here for months, she yelled from where he assumed was the living room. Well, Mito did say to make myself at home when she left. That doesn't mean it really is. It's not like she's here or anything, he replied. He walked out of the room completely dressed in the clothes he had appeared in. He had other clothes, of course, about a week ago. Although he preferred the orange pants and his jacket. He smelled something completely tantalizing as he wandered into the living room. Ramen. Awoken by the sudden delicious smell, Emmy was snacking down on ramen on a couch, with another bowl placed on the coffee table. Here, I brought you some. You're a goddess. He quickly sat down on the seat opposite of her, smiling widely. You're really overdramatic at times, just don't tell Mito we ate on her couch. Got it, Emmy? Itadakimasu. They ate silently for a while, until Emmy spoke again. So anything new? Memories, I mean. He thought about the little things he remembered, along with biggest one he recalled. I remember names. These 9 names, weird ones. She nodded her head, waiting for him to continue. Like Shikaku, Gyuki or Karama. Yeah, those are a little weird. Sure, but it felt like I should remember them. Do you know what they look like? He shook his head. They gotta be friends, right? Nah, just their names, but I think so. There was also some other unimportant dreams. Like rocks or some flash of orange. Karama, he didn't know why that name stood out to him more. He kept having some feelings though, the longer he stayed, a foreboding feeling slowly swelled within him. It didn't help that he was confined to the apartment. Naruto had noticed it before, but it was fairly insignificant and easy to forget. Now he couldn't shake the uneasiness whenever he was alone, which was fairly a majority part of the day. Emmy certainly helped with keeping the feeling away. Mito should come back, he felt he needed to do something, but what was entirely lost on him, and it was stupid. Mito listened intently to the conversation, which seemed to near its end. Between the council of the notable shinobi clans of Konohagakure. With all the present clan leaders in the room, so far it seemed that Konoha would have the greatest population in the future. Most notable were the Hyuga, Uchiha and Senju. Along with more others, all varied in number and strength. Each clan had one leader, who sat down, with an advisor standing behind. Even the respective daimyos of both Land of Fire and Land of Whirlpools participated in the discussion. Mito herself stood behind the chair of her grandfather. The talk had been going on for hours now. Her eyes flitted towards the 2 founding clans of the village. Madara Uchiha was an imposing figure, sitting down and carefully scrutinizing the talks. Wearing a high-collared black coat and with his chin resting on his thumbs. His oink's eyes calculating, but he also seemed to be a bit bored. He hardly participated at all but always listened in. He seemed to be a man who was always prepared, never letting down his guard. He was the only clan leader with no advisor. It was quite the contrast to the other man sitting beside him, chakra personality as well. Madara's chakra seemed cold and distant, evil, almost. It made her uncomfortable to be around. Hashirama's chakra was able to counteract that though, it was like she remembered it. Hashirama Senju was quite relaxed, almost uncaringly. It was wrong though. He listened intently to each and every word that came out from anyone in the room. His eyes much warmer than the Uchiha. Mito's and Hashirama's eyes crossed momentarily, before he concentrated on the discussion. He was dressed in beige robes. His brother, Tobirama, stood over him. Much less relaxed than him. From what she found out throughout the discussion, Hashirama was a charismatic person. Each person listened intently whenever he spoke, even Madara paid closer attention, his eyes less bored than before. If there ever was a single leader, it would be Hashirama. It would be more efficient, seeing the number of clans and people within the village. But according to the talks, they were already working on it. It wasn't the most pressing matter though, and had to be completed another time. It was mostly because the Uzumaki clan was called here, as they wanted to discuss their concerns. The major topic of discussion involved the tailed beasts. Apparently, Kumo had captured a tailed beast for them to use. The two tails, if information was correct. Apparently it had raged in captivity for a while, before being caught by Jutsu. Must be a seal. It was quite a feat to restrain such a powerful beast. It wasn't the first time, but others were temporary, breaking free soon after. It didn't seem to be the case for Kumo. It was quite the troublesome predicament if they had done such a thing. So far no other village had done such a thing. There would be a race to capture the tailed beasts. Each village would be researching for seals and jutsu capable of restraining them. Kumo was already ahead and had the advantage if they can use tailed beasts' power, which had never been used effectively. It was also the reason she was called to this meeting. The Uzumaki clan had been called forth to assist in the matter. Research a seal powerful enough to restrain the strongest tailed beast, which was the nine-tailed fox. It was quite the order. She made some hasty calculations. To create such a complex seal would perhaps take a year or so to accomplish. Even then, there was no guarantee that it would work to contain such vast chakra. It was quite clever. Bring both villages' ties closer together while making the village more powerful. While Konoha did have some proficiency in Fuinjutsu, it wasn't quite as advanced as Yuzushiogakure. They would guarantee that the seal would be made as quickly as possible, taking advantage of their close ties. Of course, they were offered a tailed beast themselves. Luckily her grandfather had refused. It would paint their own village if there was a power struggle between tailed beasts. They weren't as large as Konoha or the other major villages. Their power was a little pale in comparison, their country small. It was something that Shin easily understood. Perhaps somewhere down the line would be more applicable, when they gained strength. A potential war, it seemed so soon. A war to collect the tailed beasts and use them for war. It would be unlike any other thing. Not just feuding clans, or a skirmish over land. A full-scale war with numerous numbers. She took some solace in the fact that it would be years away, as they would also have to find the tailed beasts. She had felt the malicious chakra of the nine tails before. It seemed to be made of pure evil. She had been able to sense it from such a long distance. But just like all other tailed beasts, it had went into hiding, suppressing its chakra. Locating one would possibly take years. They were excellent at concealing themselves. So, seeing as everything is done, it's been agreed that the Uzumaki will conduct their research in Konoha. Hashirama stated. I'll deal with our guests. I'll gladly house them for the time being unless they obtain more permanent residence, almost too loudly, albeit in a jovial way. He brought life to the otherwise stale conference. Naruto is kind of like him. Everyone agreed with the Senju leader, the daimyos included. Madara gave a simple nod in recognition as they left the assigned seating. She recalled during the early parts of the meeting that he spoken up, stating that he had the potential to control the tailed beast, with his dojutsu. He also stated that since he could, Hashirama did as well. Mito could easily tell that Madara respected the Senju leader immensely. Although, the same could not be said towards the other clan leaders. Hashirama was still adamant on providing an alternative to their problem. As he explained that despite their power, he wasn't sure since they had never truly tested their mettle against the tailed beast. Madara's point sounded boisterous and arrogant, while Hashirama seemed more modest. Although, she was certain that both were capable of fighting a tailed beast. The only concern that was required was to seal them within something, whether inside a person or an item. An item seemed ideal. She returned to the present, seeing everyone exit the large room. The only ones in the room were Shin and herself, along with the two Senju brothers. Both Hashirama and Tobirama walked over to where they stood. That was quite the discussion. My age is getting to me, Shin commented, lightly stretching as he stood from the chair. I'm sure you still have quite the years ahead of you, Hashirama replied. Mito, it's quite good to see you once more, he smiled. One that she returned, along with a polite bow. It's good to see you as well. I'm sure we can get moving as we discuss more important matters. You can be more personal later, Tobirama intervened. His arms crossed, a slight sheepish look on his brother. I'm certain Mito is quite exhausted as I am, seeing as we had to stand. She nodded in agreement, but didn't outwardly show her exhaustion. It's quite interesting to see the dynamics in their relationship. Seeing another side of Hashirama, serious and concerned about his new home, was a nice treat. Even in a more complicated and stern environment was he somewhat the same person. Tobirama seemed to get him back on track most often. Of course. I was the one sitting down. It does get a little tiring, but the safety of the village comes as important too, Hashirama said. Let's get going and we'll talk. So you're telling me that he might be from Konoha? Shin asked. That's pretty interesting as he scratched his goatee. Mito had finally got a chance to talk about the blonde in her home. So she described everything she knew about him, explaining what had occurred when the Yamanaka was probing around in his mind. She had mostly given him her opinion of Naruto, of what she had found out about the blonde. Yes, he had known a young Hyuga woman, unsealed by the looks of it, she frowned. The way the Hyuga separated themselves was quite uncivilized. Contrary to how they presented themselves. Sealed and unsealed members. Branch house and main house. The only good thing was that it would dramatically lessen the time to see if Naruto knew one of them. Unsealed members didn't have the numbers compared to the branch house. Shin spoke once more. I have to wonder how he had gotten so far. I still have to meet him before I agree with this. She nodded in understanding. He could possibly be of some use with our research, and he can be at home if Konoha really is. Really? How can he possibly be of some help? You've seen his kunai, the seal inscribed on them, he perked up. He's a shinobi, and we don't even know much about him. He nodded, no doubt thinking about Naruto's kunai. Are you willing to pay for him for place here? She shook her head. He has a surprisingly amount of Ryo in that wallet of his, she spoke. I was also going to speak about him to Hashirama, of his possible origins. Well, we'll see, he relented. We'll be leaving in 2 days' time to escort our daimyo back to the country. Of course, now that you'll excuse me, I've already accepted an invite to dine with Hashirama, Mito replied. I'll also have to explain an extra guest. Wow, I really suck at this, Naruto could only think. He watched her make a move, taking out a good piece. He grabbed his bowl, slurped his noodles that he had gotten from Emi. His boredom made him inspect the shugi board. It was obviously made out of wood, the tiles with different colored hues. The type of wood was completely lost on him, nor did he care actually. That was how far his investigative skills got him. The only sound was from the occasional slurping from himself, and the pieces that tapped on the board, snapping annoyingly. He made another move, a different piece was promptly destroyed soon after with his lack of foresight. He noticed that he had lost interest in the game long ago, after playing several games before. Mito's a whole lot better at this than I am, Emi commented. Eating some sort of sandwich. She didn't eat quite as formal as Mito, but she wasn't him either. The same could be said of her personality. He sighed. He really didn't want to lose, despite his disinterest in the game at the moment. So far he had been desperate for more entertainment, and he had relented to playing shugi. It was too slow-paced for him, a little boring. But far better than just sitting around or reading. Well, he wanted to read, but he only itched for something specific. It was weird. He was still recollecting some memories, relatively minor, if he had anything to say himself. Where was he recollecting his shattered memories? He heard Mito say that he might not remember anything else at all. Sometimes the memories came entirely out of nowhere. At other moments it felt natural, and sometimes it crept to him. He looked up at Emi, who bore a somewhat concentrated look on her face. He found out that she had recently turned 18. Mito's own birthday was in April. So far it was June. How old do you think I am? He said, prompted by the topic. Why? Do you know? Asking curiously. Not taking another bite of the ramen. Well, taking up a contemplative look. You look like you're around my age, she replied. Probably a little bit older, a little bit younger than Mito though. That's really specific, you know. I got my reasons. Lame answer. She crossed her arms. I've got none, okay? He simply looked at her. We're just talking about A, she complained. It's the way I do things, stop trying to instigate an argument. He frowned, sighing a moment later. Sorry, it's really boring in here, she gave a face of mock hurt. Are you saying I'm dull company? Although she did have a hopeful look in her eyes. No, you're a great friend. I probably wouldn't have been able to survive for this long if not for you, her eyes twinkled in approval. I wonder what Mito would think, she tapped her chin thoughtfully. Well, it's too late for that, I already said it was boring. Wow, really? She gave a nod of approval. Some fellows like to suck up to her, I can tell you're a terrible liar too. I can lie, I just really don't see a reason to, he gave a shrug as he slurped the last of the noodles. He wondered if that had anything to do with what Mito said before. So you don't want to seem disingenuous? She asked. Sure, I mean, why would I lie to someone? I really don't see a reason for it, at least for things that he felt about other people, his views and such. Okay, what do you think of my hair? She asked. He looked at the subject at hand. Her hair was as red as Mito's, but it was far longer, and he guessed it reached her waist. It seemed to be incredibly silky if he were to touch it. It's beautiful, he replied. A thought of which he preferred, long hair or short hair. They both seemed to appeal to him. I can believe you, she said, her palms resting on her face as she looked at the game. Annie seemed to go into a contemplative trance, but still playing fear game of Shugi they participated in. Their talk seemed to be over and he began to get a little impatient, mostly at the lack of conversation. If only I get out of here, he remembered what Mito had said. How the apartment was surrounded by some sort of seal that would detect him. He tried it once, just to be curious. By accidentally falling out the front door when he answered Emmy. He was immediately surrounded by some ninja, his guards. They were actually fairly cheery about it, understanding that it was an accident. They seemed casual and made it look like they weren't guarding him at all. Emmy was also there to help him out. It seemed she knew what he had done too, and was asked not to do again, ever. He wouldn't be able to get out without alerting anyone. If only I could sneak right past it, but how? If only I could teleport, or something, he smiled at the thought. I can't, though. An aura of hopelessness fell upon him. It was odd, something popped into his head. He blinked a few times, trying to comprehend what had happened. It was sudden and thrilling. He had no idea what had just occurred, but it was amazing. He smiled widely, standing up excitedly and somewhat startling Emmy as he did. He could hardly control himself. What's going on? She asked. I'll be right back, he replied hastily, quickly reaching his room. He could feel the seal emanating, beckoning to him. It was an odd feeling. He took out the scroll which contained the kunai, along with the two that was not inside. He decided to not summon more, he thought that two would do just fine. Deciding to test it out, he moved the kunai to the other side of the room, both of them into corners. He could feel it, the seals on the kunai. He prepared to do whatever it was, before he stopped himself. Something told him that it might be stupid to try and do both of them. Incredibly so. He took a deep breath and concentrated on a specific one. For some reason he closed his eyes. Trying to visualize the kunai, it helped in his concentration. He did whatever it was. Suddenly feeling disorientated, like the entire world was flipped, he felt pain flash across his arm and bashed his head on something. From what he figured out, his was laying on the floor. What the hell? He opened his eyes, seeing the ceiling above. Wasn't I? He slightly positioned himself. Holy shit, seeing as he wasn't where he thought he was. Naruto, what are you doing? Hearing Emmy speak. Turning to his right, he saw the woman standing at the door. Why are you on the floor? Her voice with concern. Something really, really cool. He only focused on her earlier question, he could hardly contain his excitement. I don't think flaying around on the floor is cool. Not that. He stood eagerly. He made his way toward her to demonstrate. Look at this. He felt the disorientation once more. Emmy appeared to be further away and upside down. He saw the clear shock on her face. He was able to catch himself before he landed on his head. Wow was what all she could say. Isn't that cool? He said eagerly. He grabbed the three-pronged kunai and stood up once more. Shinobi are so she seemed a little taken back. How did you that? I don't know how to explain it really, he scratched his head. Something about space and time though, complicated stuff, but it just came naturally to him. But this is what makes me do it, mentioning to the item in his hand. It's the seal, being more specific as he traced the markings. Huh. With this, he smiled, anticipating. Hey, Emmy? What? He could give a mischievous smile. I still can't believe I've been helping you escape your confinement. What if we get caught? It almost happened several times now. Calm down, it's been 4 days, they haven't caught on at all. Naruto took in a deep breath of the air around him. He finally felt free, the claustrophobic atmosphere was entirely behind him. Thanks, by the way, he wore a hat to help hide his blonde hair so that he wouldn't be immediately noticed by his appearance from afar. Although it was completely useless when used up close. We would be in so much trouble if we got caught. Hey, don't worry, you got that kunai on you, and there's one at Mito's place, he tried to reassure her. Emmy had been a little anxious when they had started doing this. Although he could tell that she still somewhat enjoyed it. He would teleport back at the apartment when they saw someone they recognized. I guess. But it's fun, right? He suggested. Don't you get a thrill from it? Almost like ninjas and stuff, going on missions. She laughed then. I suppose I would have thought you actually were a spy if the only thing we didn't do was eat ramen. Well, it's not my fault, you always want to be sure no one checks on us all the time, he complained. It's a precaution. He shrugged, focusing on the building around him. They mostly just looked at unimportant buildings, wanting to get a nice look at the buildings around him. Sometimes going into random stores and seeing what they had. It's a bit sad, he heard Emmy comment. Why's that? He asked, still inspecting every building that they passed by. Various stores were in plain sight, selling numerous items. People mulled about, merely going on with their day. Nothing could compare the fresh and free air instead of that apartment. Yes, the shackles had come off and he could explore. What if you never recover yourself? I mean, going around and never knowing who you truly are, her voice cautious. Concerned. He thought a little about it, but it didn't worry him too much. He did have to be honest with himself though, he just felt this was better. For some reason. Was that bad? I'm sure I'll remember one day, he replied to her, lightly brushing her off. The last time he had recalled something was when he used the kunai. You seem pretty sure of yourself, he nodded. But what if you never do? Well, then I'll just become a new person, right? Giving his response. Besides, this place isn't so bad. I don't really know how you can say that. What of your friends? Well, Mito said that I might live in Konoha. They might still be there. He felt an odd pull, but it slipped away when he tried to recall it. You're not worried about the times you had with them? She asked. You won't remember them at all those memories will be lost. Well, I'll just become friends with them again, and I'll just make new memories with them, right? Emmy sighed then as they continued to take in the sights of Uzumaki. If they're still my friends, I'm sure they won't mind. I'm not sure whether your optimism is infuriating or uplifting. I'd like to think it's uplifting, he replied. Feeling his stomach growl, he might as well eat something. I'm starving, let's eat again. I don't have money on me right now, she replied. Then I'll pay. How much money do you even have? Emmy asked curiously. You've been paying for your own food for a while now. I dunno, but Mito seemed surprised by it though. He took out Gamachan, it was still filled to the brim. Check it out, as he handed the wallet to her, which she took. After a few moments, her eyes widened. Wow, she was left pretty much speechless. He was handed back the wallet, and he took a peek inside. He didn't exactly think it was too much, sure it was full to the brim, mostly. He just didn't think it was far too much. How can you carry that much? She said lowly. I don't see what the fuss is about. It's a lot, that's for certain. You can live in an apartment for a while. He didn't know too much, he just had to take her word for it though. As long as it's not ramen again. But I'm the one who's paying. I'm the one who set you free, she retorted. Okay, fine, he replied. They walked in silence for a while once more, before he remembered the coat he had in his room. Hey, does Mount Myaboka mean anything to you? He asked. Not really, we should check the library if you want. Does it have to do with anything with your memories? Yeah, it was written on the back of my cloak that was in my bag, he gave a thought. As sure, whatever, it wasn't like he had much to do at any point. But only after we eat something though. He took a look at the book settled on the table before him. He scratched his head as he looked at Emmy beside him. After they had eaten, they went straight to a library. The only thing he had to say about the building was that it looked incredibly mundane. It had a faint scent of musk. No doubt from the aged parchment, the old lady librarian had smelled no different. When they had entered, they had taken a look at some books. Mainly about geography. Such as the book right now. Well, take a look at it, Emmy pestered. Sure, he gave a plain reply. Looking for it was pretty boring as well. The book was about geography outside the 5 great elemental nations. Since they went through the others without any signs of what they were searching for. He flipped the cover and went from page to page, boring as he continued to do so. Some minutes passed, quickly becoming repetitive. He wanted to see Mount Myaboku, but that didn't mean the action required made it exciting. Far better than staying inside the apartment, though. Wait, there it is, Emmy said excitedly. He focused on the page of the book. Emmy's slender hand was pointing at a small picture, detailing an incredibly large mountain, spikes and jagged cliffs. Several smaller mountains were present, leading to what he assumed was Mount Myaboku. Well, it looked large, it was hard to tell from the perspective. Doesn't seem there's a lot about it, she commented. Naruto found his interest spiking a little as he read the information under the picture. A large mountain that no one has reached since its discovery, its pathways, jagged and unstable cliffs leading to the mountain make it difficult to reach, even to shinobi. No one has reached its peak, as it seemed to have a maze like roads leading to and up the mountain. The path to the mountain seemed to be devoid of life and resources, as numerous expeditions had to return from lack of food or water. A mysterious mountain indeed, lives were lost, expeditions disappearing in their struggle to tame the mountain. Its location is past the borders of the Land of Wind, almost a month's worth of travel. He lost interest as it went by, detailing other stuff. Still, it was pretty far. He looked for the date, seeing as it was published 2 years ago. He frowned, he hoped that it's still untamed, he wanted to be the first to climb it. So did you remember anything at all? Nah, nothing. He yawned. Let's get out of here as he closed the book shut. Although he did have to wonder why his coat had its name. Mito felt it was quite tedious to escort the daimyo back to his city. Nonetheless, she had finally returned. She walked along with her grandfather, also eager to meet the person in her apartment. They walked through the large gates after being quickly checked in. So far it was midday, and it had been 2 weeks since she last set foot in her new home village. She pitied him, being stuck inside her apartment within that time frame. Although the insult towards her lacking apartment was unneeded. Speaking of which, she decided to use her sensory ability. She quickly found the approximation of her apartment, finding several shinobi around it but not him. She felt her anger boil. He's not the sort to follow demands, is he? She kept her composure, as to not alert the person she walked beside with. Her grandfather. Still, seeing as the shinobi assigned were still fixated around her apartment, it was clear that he was not in prison. Despite her anger, it was quite impressive that he had somehow escaped, seeing as there was only 3 possible points to do so. Along with the seal surrounding the apartment, not including the front door alerting if he had trespassed. Her mind ran with possibilities of how that had occurred. Hopefully no lasting damage was made. Before she was able to come to a conclusion. His kunai, how could she have forgotten? She was able to find him quickly, near the edge of the village. She took a deep breath. Trying to calm her nervousness, it would be a terrible first impression for her grandfather to meet him like this. Emmy, are you also responsible? Seeing as the principle of the jutsu was based on time-space. Unless the object was thrown somewhere, but the idea that Emmy helped him seemed to be a higher possibility. Luckily, Shun bid farewell for now, seeing as he would at least allow him to get ready to meet the clan leader. She was quite thankful for that. It would give her enough time to get to where Naruto was. Emmy was beside him, nearly drowned out from his presence. She put a brisk pace through the town, seeing as Shin lived closer and Naruto was basically across the village. Deciding that she wouldn't take any chances, she easily took to the rooftops to cross the distance more quickly. Here she was trying to help him, attempting to find his home, and he himself might put a stop to that. Mito suppressed another sigh. Her sensory ability was passive, always active, at least up to 100 meters. She could control that distance to go further, at least to 30 kilometers. That required at least some concentration. When she actively controlled it, she could make precise locations of targets. Using her sensory abilities once more, she pinpointed the exact location. She almost found herself blushing at the intensity of the warmth of his chakra. His clearly stood out from the rest of the population. The rest seemed minuscule in positivity compared to his. Some of her reigned annoyance and anger fluttering away. It had been a while since she had sensed his chakra. Memory seemed a little pale to what she remembered. The time seemed to have an effect on that, seeming as she got quickly accustomed to his chakra when he was still unconscious. His certainly seemed to be brighter than others, as most were quite normal and seemed clouded. Madara and Hashirama's were quite clear, like Naruto's. Hashirama's own chakra made her feel content. Was it possible her mood was being partly influenced by Naruto? Not that she wasn't depressed, she was actually quite content with her life. Her sister was safe and living her life normally, away from danger. Mito's own life was not filled with danger anymore, merely calm days and no worrying about what might occur next week. Before, the average shinobi's life wasn't like that, nor would it last forever, it seemed. She didn't dwell on that, and would merely enjoy the time of peace while it lasted. Whether it lasted years or not. Sensing his happy chakra, it made her feel slightly better, a little more hopeful. Bright was a nice word, along with warmth to describe it. She still felt some anger at him, but it lessened some. Getting back on track. Imbecile, yes, that seemed to be a correct word at the moment. He lacked tact, in most cases. Impolite, and his language was crude. But he was honest, and carried unusual full-heartedness in what he said. He was almost like a child in that manner, to be brutally honest. It was almost refreshing, at least, compared to the shinobi world. He was a ninja, no doubt. It was a little mysterious as to how he maintained how he was, if it truly was him. What would happen if he suddenly remembered who he was? Would that person who he was now fade away? She could ask herself many questions concerning him. Like the shadow clone jutsu that was found within his memories. It was Tobirama's jutsu. It wasn't exactly widespread, but so far it was only known in the Senju clan. Who is he? Perhaps he was apprenticed to Tobirama, but she needed concrete results, and bringing him to Konoha would solve that. The Yamanaka said his past was non-existent, nothing entirely revealing. It was like someone stole those memories away, seemingly no way to retrieve them. Did someone take them? Or did he just lose them? Finding that she was near them, she jumped down below to the ground. He facing the other way, walking side by side with her sister. He wore a hat, no doubt a lame attempt at concealing himself. Blending in with the scenery. She couldn't create a scene, not if he successfully gotten away from his guards. She performed the Shunshin Jutsu, and flickered in front of him. Both individuals stopped at her sudden entrance. A moment later, Emi's face contorted in horror, but Naruto's expression was blank. He blinked a few times. Oh, he said, eyes widening in what she presumed was in his shock. He chuckled nervously. Well, I don't think saying how badass you look in that gear is going to help, huh? Mito ignored the comment and took a deep calming breath, speaking low enough so that it would seem that they were casually speaking in the middle of the street. Body language said otherwise. I assume you escaped out with the kunai, and with the help of Emi? She asked. Yeah, Emi lightly hit him for ratting her out. Obviously unneeded. Mito sighed exasperatedly. Did anyone see you? She asked harshly. He squirmed from her gaze, but he shook his head. Where's the kunai? Emi quickly dug into her pocket, and she was handed the three-pronged tool and inspected it for a moment. Naruto approached. Look, I'll show you. A firm hand was placed on her shoulder. She felt an odd wave of disorientation. The background changing quickly, the bright exterior changing into a dark, closed space. The startling feeling of the ground disappearing under her feet, only for her feet to grasp solid footing once more. She nearly stumbled but was able to right herself. She blinked, trying to comprehend the odd sensation. Her vision adjusted to the change in lighting. Isn't that awesome? Naruto said excitedly. Never do that again without warning me. She inspected her surroundings, recognizing it as the room where Naruto stayed in. I thought telling you was enough. She ignored that statement, and glared at him. Still angry at how he had risked getting caught in his escape. He looked visibly nervous once more. You betrayed my trust, Naruto. I'm not sorry, but I'm not sorry. Being stuck here was the worst, was his reply. He continued to rant a little more. You're not one to follow rules, are you? He shrugged. Mito shook her head in disbelief, but she didn't think she had much time. My grandfather is coming over soon to personally see you, so teleport me outside so I can return normally without arousing suspicion. He merely looked at the kunai in his hand. Ops, he chuckled a moment later. We just left Emi too. It was completely unnecessary, courtesy of the blonde in her apartment, but she was able to convince the guarding shinobi that it was really her. Her excuse was that she was experimenting on a new seal, teleportation, ironically. She had also given some personal information that she knew about the guards as a precaution. Fortunately, they had believed in her lie. Seeing as their assignment was finished, they cleared away from her apartment, seeing as it was completed. It was simple luck that there wasn't any sensory shinobi in the small squad. After that, she then got changed out of her shinobi gear and into more comfortable clothing. Mito still felt annoyance at Naruto, but it wasn't exactly the time for an argument. She was a little weary of the day's travel, and desired to relax for a little. A visit to the hot springs seemed tremendously enticing at the moment. Before that, though, Shin wanted to meet with Naruto. She was seated on the love seat in her living room. She could feel Shin's chakra approaching, minutes away. Naruto sat across from her, looking a little sheepish from his earlier actions. "I'll make it up to you," he promised. Mito didn't feel like instigating an argument at the moment. His expression spoke of his commitment to his words. So she took his word for that. "Let me just explain what will be occurring now. You can refuse or you can accept." Naruto nodded in understanding. She then explained of how she would be possibly living in Konoha due to a long-term mission. Although she would be able to rotate responsibilities for that, so that she could get some time off the mission, just like all the other individuals that would be researching along with her. "I've explained to the Senju clan leader of your predicament. He was glad to have someone potentially lost return to their village," she finished. "It's your choice whether or not you desire to accept his invitation." "Yeah, sure, I'll come," he replied casually. "Okay, we leave in another week. We'll be traveling by foot along with other shinobi. Within that time frame, I'll help foresee your skills as a shinobi." "So we'll be training?" he asked excitedly. A nod from her made him celebrate a little. "It's great that you're back." Naruto smiled brilliantly. She couldn't help but return the gesture as his heart felt relief, his genuine delight. He did bear his emotions, clear as day for everyone to see. Naruto sat down on the love seat, scratching his head in confusion. Though he bore a smile to sway the woman across from him from asking any questions. Her return had caused feelings to surface. There were some odd, somewhat conflicting emotions rummaging about in him. Judging by Mito's relieved expression, she had no idea that he was a little angry. He guessed that either she was terrible at gauging others, or that he wasn't so transparent. Maybe it had something to do with her being tired, but he liked to think it was all of them. That wasn't exactly the highest of his concerns. He should be more angry, hell, he wanted to be more enraged. Being imprisoned and getting his mind searched without his consent, which in fact, he probably would have given them permission to do because he wanted to find out whom he was. That's what he identified in himself. It made him a little puzzled at that. That was not the abundant feeling in him, though. It was relief. Assured? What's the word? He just felt like it wasn't that big of a deal. Everything that had occurred to him over the past month, regardless whether it was painstakingly boring, it just seemed better. The hell? Yeah, that sure was an odd thought. Better than what? All he obtained was a blank memory, and something else retarded to deal with. He wanted answers now, damn it. Troublesome, Naruto mumbled. He could only lament at how perfect that word suited his predicament. Pardon? Mito asked. Deciding not to reveal those thoughts, he asked something else he was curious about. So when's the old fart going to come around? She had an expression of bewilderment. That's my grandfather you're talking about, replying sternly. I didn't mean it in a bad way, I mean I finally get to meet the guy. You know, you always talk about him. He did help raise you and your sister, right? He seems pretty cool and stuff. Mito looked subdued, obviously drowsy. She merely sighed. He did, but if you say so, I hope you don't refer to him that way, but he should be here in a minute or so. He smirked. None of his earlier frustration seemed to have returned. Be more angry, damn it. It was too late, however. He could feel himself merely accepting it. He sighed, raising a brow from Mito. So what else could you tell me about the Uzumaki clan? Asking something to pass the time, and to fill the void of silence that made him slightly uncomfortable. Noise made everything better in his opinion. Anything specific? I dunno, it's not like I remember anything, Naruto stated. Right, perhaps I should generalize about the way of life before the village, he nodded, mentioning for her to continue. I suppose it can be said of other clans as well, but I can't be certain. If there was one thing he knew, it was that she liked to be knowledgeable. She could probably flaunt herself because he didn't know a lot of things, but she didn't give off that feeling. He was a perfect subject, mainly because of his amnesia. Hopefully. Our people were semi-nomadic, never staying in an area for too long. He was about to ask why before she explained it. We were not the largest clan nor the most powerful, so we couldn't stay in one area for too long, lest we be discovered and destroyed. Our clan is knowledgeable with seals, however, so we're fairly confident that our location could be kept secret for the time being. She droned on a little more, so he felt like he shouldn't have suggested that topic. It wasn't that it wasn't a little interesting, but he did like to talk sometimes too. He would have stopped her, but he did like the way she talked, firm, with carefully articulated words, quiet but with just enough volume. His head certainly felt a little weird. She seemed to have finished talking, and he had no idea what were her last words. So he went for a different approach. So what's up with Emi? Is she not a ninja? I mean, how did that happen? He might as well humor her a bit, at least until her grandfather came. She gave pause, likely figuring out what to say with her response. How do we think we grow? She asked rhetorically. People are married into the clan. We are most often staying near a town to easily replenish supplies or to guard them. My own father himself was married into the clan. Not all aged civilians could be trained, however, or as effectively, but we did need professions to sustain ourselves better, rather than rely exclusively on the income of missions from feudal lords. Some clans did dissolve with lack of forethought when they couldn't sustain themselves at rough times. Not really what he asked, but he got some insight concerning her family. Thankfully, she answered his question next. She smiled sadly. As with the situation with Emi, she was often plagued with sickness in her youth. Highly unusual, especially with one of Uzumaki descent. Her voice was softer. I helped care for her when our parents were gone, along with my grandfather. Emi was much shorter than her elder sister, so that might have helped their height, despite their 2-year difference. He gave a wide smile. You really care for her, don't you? I think you did a pretty great job, man. I wonder if I have any siblings. I think I would be the coolest brother ever. She gave a more genuine smile this time, however small that it was. It was definitely an improvement, in his opinion. A knock sounded on the door at that moment, and Mito quickly stood up to answer it. A gruff old man stepped inside. His aged appearance and serious expression spoke of pressing matters. However, it seemed his eyes spoke a little differently, though. Naruto also noted he was younger than he initially thought, and also he had a good beard going on. The aged man walked over to him, Mito trailing behind him. My name is Shin Uzumaki, grandfather of Mito right here. It's nice to finally meet you. His hand held between them for a handshake. Naruto quickly stood up, grabbing the gruff man's hand. What's up, old man? He smiled in amusement at the sharp intake of breath of Mito. Her eyes widened in surprise, glaring kunai at him. Name's Naruto. I would tell you more, but I don't really have a damn idea of anything else other than that. Shin's expression didn't change, but he could see the nearly hidden amusement in his surprisingly lively eyes. Naruto was also aware of Mito's hilarious reaction, worrying about her grandfather's response. He wasn't concerned about it, though. Shin let out a hearty chuckle. I suppose we can be casual. It's a good thing, too. I'm weary of all the formalities in the past few weeks. Naruto smirked. Alright, that's great. That's too much work for me, too. I probably wouldn't do it even if I was forced to. Shin nodded in agreement, along with a laugh. Mito was seemingly surprised, but she shook her head and seated herself on the couch opposite of him, along with Shin. He didn't seem to be in trouble at the moment, at least until Shin left the room. I just wanted to formally apologize, he started. Eh? What for? Naruto asked. That person didn't follow through on my specific orders. He's a person who wished to protect his village, the older man laughed. I probably should have written down the exact orders for Mito to receive, but I wanted to strengthen our clan's ties. Oh, that's alright, really. Trust is important, right? He nodded in agreement. It's a bit different than from what I'm used to. Multiple clans under my care. We were never in a position when we had to attack each other before the villages formed. So we're just on shaky terms. Well, I think you will do pretty well. I mean, you're old, so you should know stuff, right? Naruto replied. Mito had a somewhat agreeing look with that. She would have probably said it differently, though, with more needlessly complicated words. Mito watched the exchange between her grandfather and Naruto. Their discussion ranged from various unimportant subjects, from food, stories, and his circumstance. Casual, it seemed, which she participated in with a little. Yes, before I forget, may I see you perform the seal on that kunai? Her grandfather asked. Sure, Naruto replied. A blink later revealed that he magnificently disappeared. It was quite the sight to see. Her sensory ability revealed that he was nearby, in his room. That sure is. Shin seemed impressed. He exchanged a particular look. He was caught. She kept herself calm. It seemed grandfather remembered something she had forgotten. He merely shrugged. There's something about him. He played with his beard. I had a sensory type track him with specific orders, but he reported nothing that would endanger us, he added. There was a reason why he was entrusted care of the village. A secondary plan if the first should fail. Are you? She started to ask, but Shin merely shook his head. Naruto came waltzing it back in before any more could be said. Mito carefully observed her grandfather. He was surprisingly relaxed. Even in the presence of someone new. It was like this with her sister as well. This was more significant, however. So she could only guess that Naruto wasn't in any sort of danger. Naruto sat down once again across from them, the tri-pronged kunai in his hand. smirking as he looked at the looks that he got from her grandfather. From her as well, it was no wonder he could easily bypass the seal around the apartment. Emmy had helped obviously. Emmy suddenly appeared through the unlocked door, making everyone turn towards her. Ugh, Naruto, I can't believe you just left me out there. I had to walk all the way over here alone. Oh, sorry. Naruto apologized, rubbing the nape of his neck. I'm not sure what to say, I just forgot. Mito could only feel amused. Even if Naruto didn't hastily reveal his technique, Emmy would have blown his cover wide open. Her grandfather sent glances around the room, inspecting the others, bemused. The blonde seating across from her still hadn't caught on just yet. Huh, she replied, her hands firmly placed on her hips. Her eyes widened when she saw their grandfather, but she quickly masked herself. Oh, hey sis, grandpa. Finally nice to see you all back. Momentarily distracted, Shin gave a warm greeting, along with everyone else. It's okay, Emmy, she hinted, from which she quickly caught on. She was immediately relaxed, also seeing that her Shin writing seemed to be displeased in any way. Emmy nodded and turned back to Naruto once more. Did you forget about me? Because Mito came back, she turned towards the blonde, expecting something from him. Yeah. He spoke honestly and bluntly. She was surprised by that response and was honestly. She scared the hell out of me, he continued. I mean, I had no idea what to do, so I tried to distract her with this thing, displaying the kunai in his hand. She gathered herself as quickly as she could. She ignored him as her sister laughed and take a seat beside the blonde. It is fun teleporting around like that, especially if you do it fast. She took a loud sigh. So what was going on? Mito briefly took a moment to explain the gist of things. Shin cleared his throat. Naruto, I was going to ask how it worked. You didn't seem to perform any hand seals when you did it. The whiskered man gave a blank stare. Huh, what the hell are seals? With hands? Mito nudged in, letting out a chuckle. He seems to be able to do it without understanding some of the basics. That's interesting, Shin commented. Tell me, what can you tell me of it? Perhaps we can deduce the origins. It took a moment for him to reply. Well, all I know that it involves time and space, but I don't know how or why. I have to concentrate on one of them, because I think something bad will happen otherwise. You also have to visualize and position yourself, or you land on your ass. He nodded sagely but otherwise continued. I can bring someone else with me too, so I can do that stuff for them. I wonder how big I can bring something with me or how far. I'm not sure any of that would actually help. I don't think I know anything else honestly. Naruto also knows the shadow clone jutsu, Mito added. I do? He said. What's that? It sounds pretty cool. One of the jutsu from Tobirama Senju, Shin reflected. Mito quickly explained to Naruto who he was, the brother of Hashirama. Shin thought for a couple moments, as Naruto and Emmy began to talk a little more. That technique could certainly become quite powerful in the right hands and used correctly. Someone could easily bypass any barriers that may have been placed in any area, as long as they're not physical barriers. Well, Shin started, the others grew attentive. Her grandfather turned serious, straightening his poster, and raised his voice to a more leadership level. Naruto, if it turns out that you are not from Konohagakure, then I extend an offer for you to join our village and clan. She was not expecting that. It was now obvious that he approved him of going to Konoha. Looking over to Naruto, she saw her surprised sister looking expectantly at him too. He was actually relaxed, and not being jubilant as she thought he would. Maybe he didn't understand the importance or significance. So I would be an Uzumaki then? Naruto simply asked. Yes, you would be, if you chose so. Naruto leaned back, sighing. His chakra was reminiscent of one. Except, there were plenty of signs going towards that he was from Konohagakure. Perhaps someone in the clan had disappeared off and entered the Senju clan. That would explain his jacket. To remember their origins, so he should be recognized by someone when they got to Konoha. It should be that simple. Shin stood up from the couch, heading towards the door. Well, I suppose it's my time to say goodbye for now. Mito, you and the others will be leaving in a week's time, along with Naruto, of course. Naruto joined in. Later, old guy. Joining in on the farewell with them, much louder than necessary as Shin chuckled and left the building. I can't believe you kept calling him that, Mito stated. Well, he's old. That's true, Emmy agreed. Mito looked at her sister. Don't encourage him. Naruto stood up exuberantly. Well, whatever. Who wants to get some ramen? Effectively ending the conversation. She stood up, not really minding what was for dinner. Today, she needed to rest and help train Naruto. She guessed that it wouldn't take too long. He did perform a jutsu that seemed complex to master. Holy shit, it's hot! Naruto yelled. With surprising speed, he proceeded to strip right before her. Before she could properly react or avert her eyes, he already had the majority of his clothes disregarded and with the help of a chakra-induced jump, performed a cannonball into the lake water. Sighing, she wiped off the sweat building on her brow and walked to shoreline. She had no clothes to change into, but putting her feet into the water would be sufficient enough to cool off. After she took off her socks and sandals, she submerged her feet. Today was certainly hotter than she had initially thought, so it was relieving to cool herself off in the water. Birds sung their song loudly in the trees. The water gleamed brilliantly from the brightness of the sun. So far it was a pleasant day. It wasn't really a beach, but there was some dry sand before the higher patch of land. She took a seat on a nearby partially submerged rock. It probably would have been perfect if they were not training. Naruto was still somewhere underneath the surface, and had been for a couple of minutes. He came about for fresh air a moment later. That's much better, letting out a pleased sigh. He swam relaxingly a while as they both cooled off, partaking in some small talk in their break for the meantime. Her mind wandered randomly, not particularly staying on one subject for long. She remembered talking to her grandfather about why he had offered Naruto to join the village. He simply explained that it was because she trusted him, but it was a last-minute decision of his. There was also that he didn't seem to mean any harm to anyone. You're comfortable with him too, he added when she gave her observations. She had known that. She looked over the relaxing atmosphere. Mito had come to this place in particular in mind, a small freshwater lake with a nearby clearing for spars. It was suitable for training. There was some newly built training grounds near the village, but were reserved for the up-and-coming young ninja. For now, until others were created. The lake was for water walking. Surprisingly, he had some trouble with the tree walking technique, taking him an entire day to get it done. He did, however, kept going, without a single break. Perhaps she was too optimistic about him being a natural at everything. How does someone like Naruto, capable of performing an advanced sealing technique, struggle with a simple exercise? She couldn't pinpoint him sometimes. The water walking technique was a little more difficult than the initial one, and he also had no talent for combat, if their earlier relaxed spars were of any indication. She had initially started from the top of more advanced techniques. To see if he remembered any of his training, it was fruitless, however. So they had to start from the bottom tier. At least she wasn't teaching a civilian, as he had a better grasp on some mechanics. He was still a ninja, albeit poor one with his amnesia. If she didn't get him up to speed on combat, he might be a possible liability of the off chance that battles were to occur. It wasn't too much of a problem, but it certainly would add some unnecessary trouble to an all-shinobi group. It also wouldn't bode well with Hashirama when she went all the way with asking him to house a potentially useless person who couldn't help with their research. After several minutes, she decided that it was time to resume Naruto's training. Naruto, she called out, seeing him still swimming in the water. What's up? He voiced. His water-soaked bang nearly hid his eyes. Come back to the shore, I want to show you something. No need to put on your clothes after a quick return. He popped out from the water. He was obviously lean, like a shinobi should be at the least. Now conscious of his appearance, she averted her eyes. Luckily, her small little glance was left unnoticed by him. He stood there expectantly with shining curiosity. Standing from out of the water, she channeled chakra to her feet. This is the next exercise you'll be accomplishing. Taking steps out into the surface, water rippling as she walked further out, a nice distance away for him to reach. When she turned around, Mito once again found his face filled with some awe. Alright, I'm totally gonna learn that, that's cool, he said, preparing to walk before she had a chance to explain, falling straight into the shallow water. He splashed around before he surfaced once more. At least let me explain, she said to him. Right, go ahead, as he stepped out. His expression filled with eagerness and surprising determination. Channel chakra to your feet like the tree walking exercise, but this time it needs to be continually flowing and constantly adjust with the water. She explained a little more of the mechanics of before he tried once again. His eyes closed in concentration as he focused on collecting his chakra. She seen a sight that was most curious. She inched closer to him. Oblivious to the ever-widening steps she took to place herself in a better position. A seal, black as ink, was quickly becoming apparent on his abdomen. It fully formed, but it seemed cracked, broken. Some lines were misplaced, not aligning with the circle that formed. There seemed to be a missing piece associated with the odd seal. What would be 8 muddled little blobs was instead 6. The center of it was completely blackened. She slightly bent down to inspect it, fascinated by the seemingly broken seal. Never seeing such thing like it. A sudden scream made her flinch. Gah! Naruto fell over. Making her aware of how close she was just about to bend down to see. She ignored any possible embarrassing connotations with her actions. He babbled incoherently, not that she wanted to find out what he's saying. He quickly stood up. What the hell were you doing? You scared the hell out of me. There was a seal on your stomach. His expression was wary, disbelieving. There's nothing there, as he looked down below. Are you a... She interrupted. Just channel chakra and look once again. He hesitated, an odd look formed on his face. Unreadable to her. She gestured pleadingly with her hands to continue with her suggestion. His brow was furrowed, but he did what she had said anyway. As he channeled chakra, he looked below once again. His expression contorting in surprise. Oh cool. What is it? I don't know, but it's a seal. It was all that she could say really. Damn, I'm really tired of that. It's like he sighed exasperatingly, his hand resting on the back of his head. The seal on his stomach disappearing as he stopped. I can probably check to see what it may be. Another seal that she didn't know. It was nice occasion to try and figure out its properties. Yeah, sure. He concentrated to form chakra. Taking some steps closer to him before she stopped. Perhaps you should lay down to get comfortable, she suggested. It might take some time to examine. Yeah, right. As he laid on the sand, fidgeting to get himself comfortable. She sat cross-legged beside him. He then sorted to channel chakra once more. The seal becoming visible on his abdomen. Well, this is a little weird, he commented. She ignored him, trying to figure out what the seal accomplished. She already deduced that she might not find much, especially since it was damaged. Her little sealing techniques would give her some results. Some time passed as she performed them, and she watched it disappear before her eyes. Mito looked over at his face, a snore escaping from him. It's only been 15 minutes. Letting out a sigh, she shook him awake. Huh? What happened? Naruto asked drowsily. You fell asleep. Oh well, hurry up. The seal reappeared once more. She guessed that she wouldn't be surprised if he fell asleep again, but she continued to work. She continued with her seals and tried to redraw the seal on his stomach in the sand, seeing as she had no spare piece of parchment nearby. It took a while, but she tried to recreate what might be the appearance of it. It had no power of what it may have been, or anything like it. Just the outline. Done, she carefully double-checked her work. She wasn't able to fully piece it apart and deduce the full extent of its properties, but she felt that it was all that she could do. From what Mito had found out, the jutsu present on his abdomen was meant to seal something in. Not like an item, or something like that. That wouldn't require such a complex seal, or a large one. It was for something living. It was broken, however. Whatever it was had escaped. Perhaps that had something to do with his memory lost. A small and weak theory that couldn't be supported, however. Other theories had more strength. Only Kumo, at least that's what had been heard, had created something like that. Is he from Kumo? After a little more thought, it didn't make a whole lot of sense. Konoha seemed a whole lot more likely. He fell asleep again, lasting longer than last time, however. She was done, so there was nothing else that could be done. But perhaps it may have left remnants. Thankful for her sensory abilities, she started a search in the vicinity of the seal. She focused in deeper, looking for anything foreign that was present. It should have been easier to find something that was unique, but she found herself being wrong in her assumption. She had to search several times to even find a trace of it. There was something small, tiny, nearly insignificant. It was difficult to pinpoint what it was. Naruto's chakra was drowning it out with its potency. It was most likely chakra from something, or someone, but she could not identify it. Something up? Because I've been laying down for forever now, somewhat startling her. I'm finished, she replied. You look and sound disappointed. As he finally sat up, shrugging off some of the sand that clung to him. I guess it didn't really lead anywhere, huh? Or much? It did not. It'll probably become clear when I recover who I am or meet someone, or maybe I'll never remember and it'll forever remain an unsolvable riddle, or something like that. What's the point of a riddle if it can't be solved? She retorted. Not finding the answers would leave some insufferable loose ends. Having his memories apparently non-existent was already such a blow. He continued to remember things, however, so he might recall something that was important. I hope I never remember, just to spite you. You can't keep flinching and continuing to run away. You won't be able to defend yourself with such lackluster taijutsu skills, Mito berated the blonde standing across from her. You keep kicking my ass, that's why I'm running away, Naruto whined, rubbing his cheek from an earlier punch. Your form is all over the place, either too stiff or too sloppy, there's not enough power most of the time. I'm no taijutsu specialist, but you're performing below expectation. She rubbed her temple to ease her frustration. There hadn't been a whole lot of progress since then, but they weren't as focused as they were right now. In 2 days' time they were to leave Uzumaki. He was still just as terrible since they began. We've trying to do that same thing, over and over again, maybe it's time we try another approach, he suggested. I'm just as frustrated as you know? Oh really, what do you think that we should just do then? She asked. He shrugged. I dunno. Helpful. Well, he went quiet for a moment, contemplating his words. Maybe you can bring someone else to teach. Are you saying I'm an atrocious teacher? Mito questioned sternly. What? Where did you get that from? I didn't say anything like that. He scratched his head as Mito tried to calm her nerves. I'm just saying that we should try something different, other than doing the same few stuff with small differences. I mean, it's not working, is it? I suppose so, as both devolved into silence as they tried to formulate suggestions. She had to admit that Naruto certainly kept going, wearing her out near the end of the day. He was doing more than herself as well. She took pride that she was one of the best kunoichi in the village. Overall, along with the male population too. Mito had to wonder how he was in his natural state. I got it. Emmy once said to me that I should just let things come naturally to me, so maybe we should do that, Naruto recommended. She shook her head, giving her reply. And how are we supposed to go about that if we've attempting that from the beginning? No, you've been telling me what to do and what was wrong, just let me be and figure it out. It didn't look it might succeed, but she might as well humor him. Who knows, it might actually work, but she wasn't going to place all her hopes on it. She readied her stance. Well then, let's try, shall we? He still stood there, however, a hand placed under his chin in a thoughtful gesture. Wait, how about you go all out too? Don't give me any time to think and stuff. Are you certain? Yeah, you already have been beating me for days now, and besides it's different now. It'll just hurt a little bit more, Naruto finished. She thought about it. No giving him time to react or to think. Just relying on instinct. Was she giving him too much time to think? Was she too lenient? Giving him a little too much time to think to the point of second-guessing himself? Perhaps she going a little too easy on him, not pushing him hard enough. To really get results if they were present, she would have to attack whilst he was unprepared. Along with her full speed. I understand what you're trying to convey, she answered. Allowing herself to be surprised would defeat the purpose. So she mentally prepared her next moves that she would use against him. Alright, just give me a moment to. She performed a jutsu, the body flicker for faster accelerated movement. She appeared right beside him, surprise clearly written on his face. She gave him no time, or any slight act of mercy. Faster than when she sparred with him, she performed a roundhouse kick aimed for his torso. He caught it, whereas he wasn't able to do before. She continued to send a barrage of punches and kicks, as quickly as she could. His expression changed to a concentrated look, his eyes shining. His movements flowing flawlessly to one another instead of the sloppy and pitiful ones. She threw a punch, he grabbed it easily and attempted to grab it with his other hand. She broke free, but not before he failed to restrain her with his free hand. She jumped back, throwing blunted shuriken towards him. He pulled out one of his kunai to deflect them. Landing quickly, she blinked as the tools she threw was about to reach her target. At that moment, she felt something cold press against her neck. Orange and yellow filling her vision. Naruto had appeared right before her with his kunai in his hand. If this was a death match, he would have emerged victorious. Silence. Did I just win? As he dropped his arm to his side. It seems so, and your idea actually worked, she gave light praise, almost reluctantly. How cool, he reacted, which wasn't much. Perhaps he was modest when it came to achievements, he performed himself. She had initially expected him to wail in victory, jumping around excitedly. It was tame, like when he was able to water walk, tree walk and other things. So how were able to appear before me? I thought your jumps were limited to those seals, she asked as she looked for anything solid that he had slipped on her. Yeah, there's one on you, he shrugged. Mito blinked several times, there was no kunai on her. When did he? It took a moment for her to remember that she was weakly grabbed beforehand. She inspected her wrist, finding a seal similar to one on his special kunai. He caught the sight. Oh cool, I could do that too. Can you take it off? Offering her wrist to him. He looked at it for a few moments. Yeah, he replied. I have no idea, he laughed, rubbing the nape of neck once again. Try it. The seal made her slightly uncomfortable. She could easily be found and he could appear anywhere. Well, I'll try, he said earnestly, placing a nice firm hold on her wrist as he placed a palm on her seal, retreating it, only to find that it was still present. He repeated this dozens of times, only to fail each time. Never mind, as she retreated her wrist from his pleasant grasp. I honestly don't know, Mito, he replied, an apologetic smirk on his face. It's okay, I'll just take it off myself later on, she replied. It's getting late, perhaps we should go back now. Naruto carefully took off the towel around his waist and quickly dipped into the hot springs. It had been about a week now. Tomorrow was the day they were supposed to leave. He felt the hot moisture enter his lungs as he took calm breaths. The near scalding water of the hot springs calmed his muscles, a little sore from the training that he had done. He gave some greetings to the few other guys present in the hot springs, but didn't seem interested in conversing any further. Proceeding to a nearby corner, he merely decided to try and relax for a bit. It was for still felt restless, especially so for when he alone. Those weeks being stuck in the apartment did nothing to help that. He tried to talk to the nearest guy, but it seemed he was finished, quickly exiting the water. Great, no one to talk to. If he had to be honest with himself, he was slightly frustrated. He could feel the hot pressure building slowly over in his head since he had arrived here. Even with the return of Mito didn't help with that regard. The reasoning was that he was lost, completely so. He had no clear direction, he had to do something, but the largest problem was that he had no idea what it was or what to do. If he didn't have that looming feeling, he could probably ignore all that. Except it just wouldn't go away. He clearly had no identity, nothing quite familiar to work on. Just vagueness, cluttered and hidden by fog. Goddamn, did he hate things like that. Even he wasn't sure whether Naruto was his own name. That name and the gear that he apparently had was all he had to work with. There was Mount Myaboku, that no one had apparently ever been to. Then there was Konohagakure, which sparked nothing of familiarity in him. Perhaps he could reveal his insecurities to Mito and Emi, but he wasn't quite sure he wanted to burden them any more than he had to. After all, it was his problem to deal with. The training was a nice distraction, but it didn't necessarily give him a sense of satisfaction. Even if it was frustratingly hard, for some reason. Whenever he completed an exercise like the tree walking exercise, all he felt that he should have been able to do it. He didn't feel any sort of accomplishment through those seemingly tiny achievements. He grumbled in the water, bubbles flowing out. He looked at his surroundings. It wasn't grand, as it was a small place. Fairly bare when it came to the amount of customers, though. Naruto released a yawn and leaned back a bit, trying and failing to relax himself. Mito was situated somewhere on the other side of the wall. A small thought formed in his mind. She was obviously naked, and then he heard that humming tune she sung several times before. He was suddenly intrigued by this, knowing it was Mito on the other side. Emi was supposed to be there. He wasn't curious about the tune, however. Naruto paused, suddenly alert of his thought process. He looked around to see guys, most of them sat away from the wall. What the hell, am I a pervert? No, denying it. It wasn't his fault, not at all. Now he felt that slip once more, another nagging feeling. Yes, those perverse thoughts stemmed from someone else. Or was it completely natural to feel that way? Then there was Seal that was on her wrist. He could feel it calling, beckoning to him like a loyal dog. It seemed more like an angry guard dog, though. She had said that was key to him, and she couldn't take it off. Nor put on any counter seals to nullify the effects. At least, not without any unforeseen consequences. So he was entrusted to not take advantage of it. Naruto, I should let you know that you should consider my grandfather's words when you two met. Hearing Mito's voice sound. He had initially thought it was just his imagination, but other things were said. He gulped audibly. Completely forgotten that she was a sensory type, and would always feel his presence nearby. As sure he guessed that was a good thing, being disappointed was a sure tell sign that he was perverse. Wiping those thoughts away, at least Mito thought well of him, enough to think that he wasn't that kind of person. No accusations, that was a good sign. He recalled some of Emi's little input on her older sister. He was also explained by her sister that she was a little haughty. That much he knew at least. She always had this sense of superiority because she ate correctly, or spoke in such a civilized way. As long as the meaning came across, or the food entered his belly, everything was okay. Better than okay, it was perfection in his opinion. It didn't mean to be so pointlessly complicated. He didn't exactly voice his opinion as of yet, but it didn't matter all that much to him. Maybe it was who she was, he didn't mind that. Kind too, but a little bit condescending. It was nice to knock her down a pegs at times. Plus, her reactions were hilarious. She was being ordered to help him, that much he knew, at least partly. Not anymore if he knew now. He did his best to understand the reasoning to protect her village. His life was insignificant compared to the entire village. He was a potential danger to them. The world didn't revolve around him, nor could he change it alone. Another feeling welled up before it disappeared once more, but he had a feeling that it had to do with his earlier thoughts. Disregarding it, seeing as he had several of those already. He had already talked to Emi about it, letting things come naturally and not force it. Hey Mito? It seemed a little odd to talk like this, he'd rather talk face to face. Yes? What might have happened if I were to have popped up anywhere else? Like in another village? He asked. She took a moment to answer. Other than Kanahagakur, this is just conjecture on my part. To put it bluntly, you might have been killed. He flinched a little. He would have been defenseless if his sparring matches were of any indication. Thanking whatever entity or event that had landed him near Uzumaki, he probably wouldn't have been given the same offer as the old man did. So why are the two villages so special? There are many clans that join the different villages. Not all of them are quite as forgiving as us Uzumaki, although that has caused some grief as well, she said rather emotionlessly, but went back to her original voice a moment later. The Senju would likely have done the same as us. Hashirama Senju, their clan leader, is quite a generous person. I should meet this guy. I have a feeling he's someone I would like, he replied. Along with others that are coming with us, we are staying at his compound. I have told you that before. Right, I wasn't really listening because you kept talking that time. He was met with silence for several long moments. And what do you mean by that? She said rather icily. Nothing bad, I swear. I just like listening to you talk. She didn't reply to that. So why weren't you so worried? Naruto asked. Again, another long moments passed. He let out a sigh of relief when she began to talk again. We were friendly with the Senju clan, and by default with the Yamanaka clan. Their clan jutsu is especially useful for such a thing. So my grandfather and I were confident with someone like you. I imagine other villages wouldn't have taken such a chance. There was some muffled murmuring that he couldn't catch, but loud laughing was soon heard. It was Emi's, if he could recall. Apparently catching up with her sister. Be quiet. Hearing Mito berating her little sister, but they didn't seem to talk anymore after that. He relaxed, wondering what was so funny to Emi. Plenty of things were going to happen now. Tomorrow, they would finally traverse to Konoha, along with several other shinobi of Uzumaki. Then he wasn't sure so about those other things. Naruto? He heard the voice of Emi sound from the other side of the barrier. Briefly, a vague impression of her also in a state of undress appeared. Damn it, he muttered under his breath before speaking up. What's up? We're going to go talk with our friends, bye. Alright, not getting an answer. He decided to wait around the water, trying to ignore the seal he accidentally placed on Mito's wrist. Tomorrow morning they were supposed ready for days of travel. He had a dream when he slept that night. He was walking through wreckage of rusted steel and decayed wood. Making his way through worn and old buildings. He found himself standing on a fallen pillar overlooking destroyed wreckage. It was unrecognizable. Some turned-over buildings had fallen into a nearby river. The area might have once looked impressive at one point, if it wasn't obliterated. He remembered thinking that it was a very odd dream. Walking through the area. He was here for something though, what that might be was lost on him. He trudged on however, impatience coursing through him. From the surrounding decrepit buildings, many others joined in his search. Naruto, are you ready? He turned around to see Mito standing there by the doorway to his room, a small pack shouldered on her back. She probably used seals, just like him. She was likely oblivious to him knowing that he had figured that stuff out. I wasn't too hard, if he could take stuff out, he could put stuff in. Remembering the seal was a pretty nifty thing too. Yup. I'm all packed and roaring to go, he answered, flinging the pack onto his back. He also had such a fantastic idea, and couldn't wait to start it. Actually, right now was probably as good as it could get. Let me see. Alright, I don't see why though, he shrugged, giving her to pack just to see. Naruto, her expression turned a little disbelieving as she searched a little around. Yeah? This is full of ramen. So? What's wrong with ramen? It's the greatest food in the land, he reasoned. She simply looked a little struck by his reasoning. You can't be, so are you? Wow. Way to overreact, Mito. I'm not that much of an idiot. I put my clothes in here as he pulled out a scroll that was hanging to his back. Her brow was furrowed cutely, as in disbelief or something. It's so I get my ramen really fast, he added. Mito's eyes widened a little, her mouth twitched a little, threatening to smile. Sometimes, Mito, you need to take a load off, you're too serious all the time, he smiled, undeterred by her glare. Here, she simply said. Emmy is supposed to be here soon. He got his pack full of ramen back, he put the scrolls full of items on the side or in the pockets. Right. He saw his coat, with the kanji of Mount Myaboku on the back. You know I found out where this is. Mount Myaboku? He nodded. Yeah, it's pretty far away though, a month full of traveling. You might be from there, she suggested. I don't think so. I read that people have never been on the top of it, he explained more of the descriptions of its surroundings. You might be the first, or that a village was already been situated on it, perhaps on the other side of the mountains. So I might be from a strange land? He shook his head, too many theories and not enough solid answers.